Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. Today, feedback and updates from the cult in our viewer mail section, plus what I told Jeff Jarrett about Vince Russo 20 years ago, and the Walrus is Paul, and he has spoken. All that and more today. And joining me for this, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He is the pod man, Cuckoo Cachoo. Be great, Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for a fun episode. It has to be because I have no idea what we're going to do or what we're going to talk about, so that usually leads to a fun episode.
Well, I've had very little time to do preparation. I'm a new father, as everyone knows. Over the past couple of shows, I've revealed to the nation and the world at large. See, I'm so tired, I'm fucking slappy today. The Nature Boy Buddy Cornette and Alfred Puddensworth Cornette, the new additions to Castle Cornette, the two princes, the heirs to the throne, the brothers of destruction, and various other things, including the weather. It's like the tornado season won't end here, and I've been staying up and gauging the weather for the level of destruction about to descend upon us over the last week or two. It's just all been catching up, and now we're going to have a fun time today talking about a variety of nutty people that do foolish things. Let me ask you one thing. Would you rather have a pain in the ass or a cramp in the leg?
For how long?
Oh, goddamn, he's always got to put these fucking fakakta qualifiers on. For about 10 minutes.
I mean, I don't want, what kind of pain in the ass? Like a itch? Like a little itch or like, you know?
Well, it's the old saying, boy, he's a pain in my ass. Like that's the worst thing that you can have, right? Well, I've had pains in my ass. I've had both hemorrhoids and I've booked professional wrestlers. So I've had the literal kind and the figurative kind. And I'll be a son of a bitch if I won't take the pain in the ass over the cramp in the leg every time. I went to bed early last night, tried to. It wasn't even dark, of course, since the summer solstice has just ceased. That's after 9 o'clock around these parts. But Stace's going to take the late shift with the pups till they tire out. Daddy's going to get some sleep. And I went to sleep, and about an hour later, I woke up and I said, I got to piss. And when I turned over to the side and began putting my feet to the floor, suddenly my left thigh and your quadricep is one of the biggest and strongest muscles in your body. And imagine on a man in the physical condition that I am, Brian, how massive and tough and gristly this thing is. But all of a sudden, my left leg, before I could even step down on the floor, my left thigh just cramped the fuck up. And I'm like, what is happening? And I tried to stand up, and it was better if I put weight on the leg, as if I tried to lift the leg, I was going to scream. And I'm trying to massage from an up to down motion with both of my hands, because that seems to be relieving it while I'm hopping around going, oh, goddamn fucking Jesus Christ. It was like somebody had put me in an industrial vice of some kind. It was twisting the tendons and the ligaments in my leg. It hoit. And I did that, and it seemed like it was going to almost subside, and I could almost stand up and straighten the leg out. And then it started again. Well, now I'm bent back over and I'm rubbing. It's like I'm jacking my leg off. I'm bent over. I don't have to mention that I'm naked. And I'm trying to lean on the bed. And now I'm thinking, my God, I'm getting lightheaded because I've been bent over and active so long out of a sleep and sudden this pain. And I think I'm going to pass out. And then I'm thinking I'm going to fall over head first, pass out, break my fucking neck. I'm thinking I've got to go. Stacy's downstairs with the dogs, the other end of the house. I've got to go to her. I try to fucking hop on one foot to the goddamn door. And I can't get down the stairs. Oh, Jesus Christ. So I call her and she answers the phone like, what the fuck? I'm calling from bed. I said, help me. I'm going to die. And by the time that she got up there, I said, just take over rubbing. And I was able to stand up straight and let the blood I don't know if it's supposed to go back to your brain or go away from your brain, whatever it did. And I didn't pass out, but is this the way it ends for little Rico? I'm going to just die in my bedroom. I was thinking if I pass out, I'm on the floor. I'm going to, with my fingernails scratching the polish on the floor, my last will and testament.
Do you know what a scandal
Has that ever happened to you?
It would be such a scandal if we reported Jim Cornette died today of a leg cramp. No one would believe it. I've woken up in the middle of the night with bad cramps in my calf. I think more than really.
Oh, yes, I've had that a number of times, but this is goddamn insane.
They say it's because of dehydration. Did you drink enough yesterday, or are you too busy to drink?
No, I had about a 12-pack and a fifth of fucking vodka. No, I didn't drink to my knowledge. I drank neither less nor more than I usually do. It was a busy day. I was very tired, as a fatigue may have played a part. Possibly I was so tired I forgot to drink.
How you feeling today?
I'm all right now, but last night I was in rough shape. Oh, I tell you. I went to the doctor, but I got puppies. I got puppies over here. The puppies got juice on me for the first time. I don't know which one it was, but because I close my eyes when I'm down on the floor with it, you can leave the room for 5 minutes. When you come back, it's not only like they haven't seen you for a year and you're the most important person in the world, but also you're saving them from a burning building. It's just the level of gratitude for walking in the room, right, is insane. And I get down on the floor with them and I see them coming at me and I close my eyes because they're going to variously lick all over my face, nibble on my ears, paw me over my head, and say, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," in just a cute, nonverbal way. But when they were pawing me to say, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," one of them snagged me right by the nose. And about 15 minutes later, I walked in front of a mirror. I said, "I got a bleeding." I had a big fucking juice spot over there. Alfred Puddensworth, unplugged the internet the other day. So I applauded him and gave him some treats because he's just like me. He hates the fucking internet. He walked over to the wall and just calmly, that white thing that's supposed to bounce your hi-fi, Wi-Fi all over the house that you plug in the wall? Or do you have any idea what that's called in a normal?
Talking about the orbs?
The orb. It says Orby.
I think that's a brand of orbs, or
it's orb in the plural, Orby, Orbi. Anyway, he walked over there and just took that white thing, plugged in the wall in his mouth, and just unplugged it, and he cut off all the fucking Wi-Fi. So he's my puppy too, even though Buddy's mine. Alfie's a little bit leaning toward mommy. That's the way we've settled into things. He's secretly my puppy. He's trying to sabotage the internet. And just a quick happy birthday to Stacy's mother, Jan, who, as longtime listeners will recall, has been here about a year and a half now. They moved out from California, and we had this past Wednesday night, we had her and Stacy's stepfather, Dan, and Stacy's sisters in town, Brenda, for the special occasion. And we had my world famous spaghetti and meat sauce dinner here at the house. And she also took about 2 pounds of the sauce home. Her mom did. I mean, she didn't take it.
See, that's why you're dehydrated. She took all the sauce.
Well, no, she's been on the sauce for quite some time. No, that was my present to her because she loves my spaghetti sauce. She would take it intravenously if possible. So that was one of my birthday presents that I got her, was an extra couple pounds of the sauce to take home. So I did spend, I guess a long day, long night. Yeah, I guess I might have been dehydrated because I cooked all day. I've had the fucking weather, blah, blah, blah. All right, you ain't no doctor. Anyway, happy birthday, Mom. And we have some viewer mail. We heard from Adam. from Whitby, Ontario, Canada. And of course, we've been doing kind of a version of Reggie's Corner that we've renamed Harley's Corner going forward. But Adam wrote in that he lost his 14-year-old corgi Max a few weeks ago. And he says, we have a baby right now, so our family will have to wait a while until I can commit the time to train a new puppy. And Adam, while we send you our condolences over Max, you should have planned ahead better. You know, these young children can get in the way of puppy time. So wait to have the human babies until you're like old and have given up on life. Anyway.
All right, a fun show today.
Oh, come on. You're just jealous because you've only got Swami and I got 2 dogs.
I don't know if we can handle 2 dogs right now. Suzanne gets so mad about me asking everyone else to walk Swami because I'm busy.
You know, did you ever listen to Cats in the Cradle? Brian, you should spend time with Swami while he's still home there before he grows up and moves out on you and has a litter of his own.
Harry Chapin was from Point Lookout, where I'm from, Long Beach.
Well, then you should have learned his lesson. Spend more time with Swami. And Andrew in Scotland lost his 15-year-old, I don't know what he was, but Bruno, he's a dog, but I don't know what breed. But Bruno was 15 years old. And he heard about the new fluffy additions over here, and that brought a much needed smile to his face, he said. And also, moving away from the 4-legged friends, I've had this for a couple weeks and I misplaced it and didn't read it, but I want to recognize, got an email from Scott. He doesn't mention where he's from, but he said, my wrestling buddy of 37 years, Jeff Keek, passed away at the age of 56 from a heart attack. He was a passionate member of the cult of Cornette and never missed an episode of either podcast. Once he turned me on to him, I immediately became a convert. So Scott owes us to Jeff, and he still liked him. And Scott says, if you could give him a shout out, it would mean a lot. This one really hurts. Thanks, Scott. And Scott, we're sorry for the loss of Jeff, not only as your friend, also as our friend. Oh,
yeah, very sorry for your loss.
You know, again, you never know. So they've known each other since he was 19. So spend more time with Swami. You never know when these things could happen. And an email from Spencer that you forwarded to me, Brian, because this was from the drive-through email address just to torment me, because you know what the absolute most disgusting, nauseating, mentally stressful injury I've ever had is, and you sent me this fucking email. It to gross me out and make me ill. It's from Spencer. He says, I had emergency hernia surgery on Mother's Day. My bowel had gotten stuck in my groin, and my colon had got stuck with it. His asshole was hanging out of his guts in front of his dick. What the hell?
The fuck? Now that's a pain in the ass.
I was in surgery for roughly 4 to 6 hours and in the hospital for 5 days while they observed me. I ended up with 28 stitches and 2 incisions. One in my stomach and the other in my upper thigh. What in the fuck? While I was in the hospital, the only way I could get to sleep was to play either the Mid-South Schedule Omnibus or one of the 3 Guess the Program Omnibi. And anyway, before I talk about the A's, Spencer concludes, I live in High Point, North Carolina, grew up a wrestling fan. My dad always talks about going to see Wahoo McDaniel wrestle at a high school gym in Trinity, North Carolina. I listen every week while I'm at work and listen to old clips whenever I can find them. I've included a picture of my wonderful son. He's a 130-pound German Shepherd, and he's a good boy. But that's one of the worst descriptions of what were you trying to do, Spencer, out there in podcast land where you try to goddamn lift the Empire State Building? How would that I don't even know what question I'm trying to ask. He's got me frazzled. Would you like to ask any questions? Like, when will this be over?
Of you or Spencer? Yes. Jim, when will this be over?
Well, it'll be over right now because we're moving on. But goddamn, that's just terrible. I don't like to hear stuff. I'm squirming around in my chair right now. All right, I got an email from Bryant Rogowski.
Oh, wow.
Who some people are not putting two and two together because I've thrown it up in the air out of the blue. He wrestled for me in Smoky Mountain Wrestling as Bryant Anderson because he's Ole's son. And Bryant, who we've talked about before here on the program, was actually able to fucking say, maybe wrestling's not the thing, and become successful in an actual real life. But we did the Road Warriors biography review, Brian, you and I, and talked about some of the things that they left out and how the story of Hawk and Animal coming together and going to Georgia as a team was glossed over with little detail. So Bryant was addressing that. Would you like to hear that? You don't want to hear from the regular folks. Would you like to hear from a fucking superstar?
I have no problem hearing from the regular folks. I would like to hear this. You know, Bryant Anderson, although a rather brief career, showed a lot of promise in his brief run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I mean, you had him working with Tracy Smothers. That was kind of the perfect guy for him.
Well, yeah, but he surveyed the lay of the land, and I'm not sure how welcome Ole's son would have been in the WWF. Yeah, so we got it right there. You know, can you imagine the first time Bryant might have been walking down the hall and run into Linda? Oh, hi, Linda. I remember when my dad said, fuck you. So his directions in the business were somewhat limited as things constricted, but nevertheless.
And that's what, you know, for someone like Ole, who every interview you ever see with him, he always makes sure to point it out. You know, why was I in the wrestling business? To make money. It was all about making money. If I didn't make money, I would do something else. Bryant Anderson saw where the money was, and he got out of the business.
Well, there you go. And he saw who had the money. But anyway.
Exactly.
He said, I just listened to your review of the Road Warriors biography and thought I'd pass along a couple of memories for posterity. I agree. They play fast and loose with history. I remember Joe's first Georgia run, a detail that's missed. I remember we talked about this, that Joe Animal had actually been a single Road Warrior. Remember the biker cap and the blue jean shorts and the odd. Yeah, he was the Road Warrior as a single, but it was an odd kind of a village people type of, nevertheless. Bryant says, a detail that is missed, that run ended at least in part because Joe's dad was driving my dad a little crazy, calling all the time, bitching and moaning on Joe's behalf, which
wow, I didn't know that.
I've never heard that. Oh my God, because I mean, obviously it's hard. Long-time listeners of the program will understand that at this point, Joe had probably been making more money as a bouncer in fucking Minneapolis than when he went down in 1982, maybe for 6 weeks as this Road Warrior prototype. He was on the underneath of the card, and he was probably, you know, with a business in Georgia, if it was that good at the time, he wasn't going to be getting any big payoffs because he's a brand new rookie in the first match. When he brought him in as the Road Warriors and they were on top, I guess Animal's father didn't need to call. But yeah, so calling all the time, bitching and moaning on Joe's behalf. I was also surprised, and I'd heard this story and didn't think about it at the time because it's been years. But Bryant says there was no video or anything of how Mike got picked as the partner. Dad used to say that Sharky had a whole lineup of big guys when he came to Grandma B's to look at, right? As he went down the line, everybody was quiet and respectful, but when he got to Mike, Mike said, so you're the big wrestler? You don't look so tough to me. And Dad said, that's the guy. And Bryant says those guys called the house for years after, just to touch base and show their appreciation for getting the shot. Anyway, just a few memories. So thank you, Bryant. But yeah, so you're the big wrestler. You don't look so tough to me. And Ole, that's the way to get over with Ole. If you look like Hawk, if you look like fucking Joe Schneed and you say that, you'll eat your eyeballs. But anyhow, are you awake?
Yeah, no, I didn't have anything to add after that. Great email.
Well, how about this?
Send in more thoughts, Bryant Anderson.
No, he can send some more in later, but he didn't have any more there. How about this from a longtime listener, old Kevin from Cardiff, Wales, who has been going to wrestling for ages and eons, and just gave us some information on how the big TKO Corporation is now just giving people up the poop chute in Wales. Would you like to hear this?
In Wales, I just saw a photo and I didn't get a chance to check it out just to make sure it was completely on the up and up, but I had no reason to doubt it. It was the WWE. They just did their show at the O2 in London, and there was a giant part of that building tarped off. They didn't sell those tickets, so I don't know what's going on over there.
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. I don't think they care they didn't sell those tickets, because listen to this. He said, my son and I attended a WWE house show last night in Cardiff, Wales. I'm going to skip ahead in the email and give you the information on the last times that he's been there first. In 2009 in Nottingham, he had William Regal on the card, Drew McIntyre, Batista, Rey Mysterio in the main event, Undertaker, CM Punk in a casket match. Ticket price is £40 a piece. So, God, what's the pound? Well, when I was over there 10 years ago, it was a couple of dollars, give or take. Maybe, they paid $80 a piece for their tickets, right? 2015 Cardiff, Wales. Appearances from Mark Henry and The Big Show. Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose was the main event. Well, they can't all be winners. Ticket prices, £40 a piece. 2019 Cardiff. The Revival was there. Bobby Roode, Chad Gable, Becky Lynch. Main event, 6-man tag, including Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre. How much do you think tickets were, Brian?
What year was this?
2019.
2019, it had been £40 each previous time. Has to go up a little bit. £50.
£40.
Oh, wow, really? Wow.
Basically, the tickets that he and his son were buying, and everybody's going to say, oh, there's more than one ticket price, but basically that's what they were getting in for in the place they chose to sit. 2026, appearance by Dirty Dom, which was, he says, great, by the way. All of Judgment Day except Finn, Penta, Ethan Page, Rusev, and a returning Chad Gable, Lyric Valedictor, whatever her name is, one half of the Street Profits, Austin Theory, and Braun Breaker versus LA Knight. Cost of these tickets, Brian, £175 a piece.
Holy
He
shit.
said £350 for two, him and his son. He said the house show certainly wasn't poor. However, I'd have to question the wisdom of a street fight at a house show, as when they were fighting outside the ring, most of the crowd couldn't see anything at all. That's the fucking point I've been making for 25 years. Everybody on the card worked their socks off. They worked their socks off, but they'd already worked so hard they were out of their boots. And then they lost their socks. Where's the star power? He's the poster for the event had CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Roman Reigns. None of these guys were there. The merchandise stand was busy selling T-shirts of all the wrestlers who were not appearing. And my son got an Obafemi one. So they're charging apparently well over, what is that, 3 times what it was the last time they were there, admittedly 7 years ago, but still they had maintained consistency. And now with less of the stars, more of the money. And he says the arena was roughly 75% sold. But if you figure they've tripled the goddamn ticket prices, see that's why I always said when I got into business, the question that every wrestler asked on the card as soon as they saw the promoter that night, as soon as they figured that he'd been to the box office and they'd done the count, what's the house? And the promoter, if he wasn't evasive or an outright prick, he might lie to you, but at least he'd give you some answer, but it would be 20 grand, right? $20,000. What's the house? $20,000. And then, like, 15 years ago, 20, whatever it was, when I started going to some of these independent shows, you'd say, what's the house? They'd say, oh, like 750. I'm like, what? Yeah, 750. What? 750 people. I don't care how many I care how many people are out there. I'd like there to be more than less, but it's what they paid. And especially before people started just being crazy enough to pay high ticket prices for outlaw shows, I understand most of the independent promoters not wanting to admit to what their gate was. We had 800 people. Of course, 200 of them are related to somebody on the card or whatever the fuck. But that used to drive me out of my mind. I don't want to know how many people were there because it used to be the old rib. We don't need to draw 10,000 people at $5. We just need to draw one motherfucker at 50 grand. So they're now looking to actually fulfill that. If they sold 75% of the arena and the ticket averages were a couple or 3 times as much as before, what the fuck is going on here? They seem to be money grubbers, Brian's my point to that.
They're making more money than ever before. They're paying themselves more money than ever before. Ari Emanuel's been an executive in the entertainment industry and the most powerful agent for a long time. He's never made more money than he does running WWE and UFC. Meanwhile, they're asking wrestlers to take salary cuts. They're releasing people. In some cases, you question why. But you have to think no matter how much money they're making right now, there may be a wall at a certain point. We see the market-to-market, reports that WrestleNomics does. There's very few places that they're growing the audience. They seem to be losing audience whenever they return to a town. Now, the people going there may pay more than the previous batch of people that were there, but what about next time? And what about the time after that?
You're saying there is going to be a tipping point between, we say, well, they may have had less people, but they raised the ticket prices too. Well, they've really got less people and they had to lower the ticket prices. There's at some point that is going to happen if they don't watch out where the cliff is.
Hey, here's another question for you on a similar vein. AEW has such a dedicated fan base when it comes to their most devoted fans. The people that swear everything is amazing even when stuff is the bottom of the toilet. If Tony raised his ticket prices right now, would it have a negative effect on AEW, or would they get the same people just paying a little bit more? Like what WWE is doing, I'm not justifying it or saying that level of price increase is a good thing. Certainly not fan-friendly. But if Tony Khan, who one of their things is they have cheap ticket prices. I mean, you can get a cheap ticket for really cheap, and that's good. But for the tickets down front, for the people who want to sit in the first few rows, the people who want to be down on the floor, if you know you're going to get them anyway, why not raise your prices?
I think that there is an element of these people that follow this thing that would pay almost anything and then start, trading like, here's my car, or take one of my children, or whatever, to get in there and just to be part of whatever that is. But at the same time, we've seen that just by not having really talent that are over to anybody but that small element, or just incomprehensible television and just blah, they hit their dips, and then something will happen that they'll kind of get a little lifeline again. But I don't think they need to do anything to discourage their live attendance, because while the ratings certainly are not what they were at the start, but they plateaued at the bottom and then have come back up a little, and it depends on what kind of service Nielsen or method Nielsen's using this week. But they've never regained their ability to sell tickets and run those big buildings that they had the first couple of years. And I don't think he needs to do anything to discourage any of the people who, even the peripheral people, but also the people who are so dedicated they have to be there. I don't think he needs to make it any more difficult or burdensome, or to mentally justified buying his tickets to a live event by raising the prices of, because it's still crowds of 2,000 and 3,000, except for the big markets and the big destination points for the big shows.
Well, we'll see.
But I mean, it's not like he needs to worry about making money. You heard he was doing the interview a couple of weeks ago, and they asked him, well, is AEW profitable now? Oh, we're grossing more than we ever have.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Tony's not a businessman, and Tony can't book. And you have to wonder, I always have, what would AEW be today? What would it have been for the past 7 years or so if this devoted, dedicated fan base had a good booking and a good American wrestling television show? They've never had that. I remember before AEW thinking, wow, what would it be like if New Japan aired in America and that style of wrestling was mixed with American promos and angles and realistic looking stuff? And instead we got a clown show over there, but they have a dedicated base. We know what their base is. I mean, they're running small buildings, but, again, going back to the main topic, WWE, they're not worried about anything, and they make a killing off just about every single end of their business right now. Look at the Danhausen merch, everything. There's going to be a dedicated fan base that'll spend anything. They're selling money in the bank ticket packages right now where you get for a few $1,000s, you get a seat and a chance to take a picture with the fucking briefcase. Who gives a shit? But there's a fan base that wants that. They want to be able to go to work and say, look what I did. I went to ringside and took a picture with this briefcase.
Are they offering people pictures with the briefcase?
Yeah, I'm not joking. Hold on. I just got this email before. I'll click on it now. You're going to make me do this. Money in the Bank VIP packages are now on sale. Shop VIP packages. Let me click this. Now, the elite ticket package, they will not put a price to. They probably learned their lesson from people ridiculing this high price thing. So you have to contact their team to get a price.
Well, it's priceless.
It's priceless. Here's the champion package, which is $2,500 a ticket.
So whatever the big priceless package is more than $2,500, we know.
Yes, because this is after the $650 per ticket plan. So this is second, and the other one that they won't put a price to publicly, that's the highest price one. $2,500 gets you premium ringside seating, a ringside photo op with the official Money in the Bank briefcase, an all-inclusive pre-show hospitality with Ricky Saints, Roxanne Perez, and other WWE superstars who can't say no to this kind of thing.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, boy, howdy.
I don't know what this means. The Big Easy Welcome Experience. I don't know if they're going to...
Well, they're in New Orleans, right?
Right, but I don't know what the Big Easy Welcome
No, New Orleans is the Big Easy.
What's the welcome experience?
they're probably going to hand you a couple of pamphlets from the Chamber of Commerce and tickets for 25% off the fucking titty bar. But New Orleans is the Big Easy, and there'll be a goddamn mug involved probably.
You also get a commemorative chair, an autographed commemorative poster, a dedicated priority pass entrance, a WWE credential, and a lanyard. Very expensive lanyard there. And also professional on-location.
Well, a credential to do what? Are you allowed to the backstage area or just willy-nilly access? Can you kick your feet up in the Divas locker room? What?
They're now selling bullshit credentials. No, you're not credentialed for anything. That's not how it works.
It's like a fucking toy police badge, isn't it? Right here.
That's exactly
here, Oscar.
Right.
You're the sheriff now. I can pin that on your shirt, and all the kids will have to get out of town by sundown.
For $2,500 a ticket, you get to be an official WWE inspector. You get a magnifying glass. And a little pad, and you get to go around the arena and pick up garbage. Yeah, but that's a big deal. The picture with the briefcase. You would never know a real one from a fake
what
one.
Would you do? Would you smile or put your arm around it? How do you pose with a briefcase? What do you?
The point. You got to point to it. That's it.
This thing is more important than me.
If I put a fake briefcase in front of you, would you know the difference? Like, it's not like it's a beauty mark or anything. You can tell the difference between a real one and a fake one.
You think they'll pull the old Swizz itch with the briefcases? It'd be like Nick Goulas. Just send a Spot Show briefcase out for that.
Well, I just saw something. Oh, God, I don't remember all the details. WWE and Fanatics, I think it was, were doing an auction of ring-used stuff. And it was like this steel chair was used in, I want to say it was like the women's Elimination Chamber match. And they auctioned it off for like a whole bunch of money. And then someone went back and watched a match and they realized there was no chair used anywhere in that match. So who knows what they fucking auctioned off. And that's WWE. That's them doing it.
Well, remember Hulk Hogan boots just auctioned off for a ludicrous set, like fix. It was fixed. 6-figure amount where he signed something to the effect of, and there was a blood spot on it. This is the blood, and I slammed the giant or whatever. And they were sold as his WrestleMania 3 boots. But then they look back at it, or other independent people who weren't involved in this thing look back, that doesn't look like those boots. They may have been his boots, but they might not have been those specific boots. Because the guys will sign anything. And if it's something that specific for that much money, you need to not only get the certificate of authenticity type of things, but you need to know that they know the difference between horse shit and not when the boys are talking to them. Anyway, I got an update, Brian, remember we were talking about Chris Adams pulling out off Rod Price's wig when we were talking about the wig mishaps, that one that befell poor Jane Cargill here not long ago. Or Jade, is it Jane or Jade? Now
it is Jade. You called her Jane in AEW because
yes. And now I've worked myself. I can't remember which one it is, but nevertheless, we also mentioned a few of the guys who'd worn wigs, and one got pulled off. Chris Adams in Dallas pulled off a fellow named Rod Price's weave, apparently, because I got an email from the Mempho Mofo. And he said, heard you talking about the incident with Chris Adams pulling out Rod Price's weave. One of my trainers was there the night it happened. This refreshes me on the story, and this is kind of the same thing that I heard. Price had gotten a surgical weave where a wig was literally sewn into his scalp. Jesus. Everybody knew about it and knew to stay away from it and not yank on it. Adams was a dick about it, and at this time was always drunk or pilled up. And this was the early 90s when anybody seen the Chris Adams dark side or just knows anything about Chris Adams and the things he did before he got killed by blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, what was this, 92 or 93? Somewhere in that
92,
range,
93, something like that. Because by the early 90s, he had no place to go. Anyway, he and Price were feuding, and this was in the early 90s Dallas office. Adams would slap Price on the top of his head when it was still sore and recovering just to be a dickhead. He was always joking about ripping off Price's wig, and no matter how many times he was told you can't rip it off, it'll pull Price's scalp off, Adams would still say he was going to do it. And on the night that it happened, Price and Adams were in a judo match. Adams bumped Price, and Price rolled outside. Adams reached through the ropes and grabbed Price by the hair, but instead of pulling Price in a working way, Adams grabbed his hair with both hands and yanked up as hard as he could. Instead of the wig coming off, Price's scalp ripped away from his head.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
He immediately ran to the back through the locker room and into the shower. Blood was already pouring out of his head. Price collapsed in the shower from blood loss and passed out. They called an ambulance to come and get Price while he was laying on the floor in an ever-expanding pool of blood. The ambulance took Price to the hospital. He almost bled to death from the injury. They had to cut the wig out so that they could work on the horrible damage to his scalp. Adams claimed it was an accident, but everyone knew there was no way because of the effort needed to rip Price's scalp off his head that everyone figured Adams was just drunk, high, and mean and decided to rip off Price's hair. Price didn't go after Adams after this. They turned it into an angle and kept working their program. My question is, how did Chris Adams not get shot several years before he got shot by his best friend?
Boo-ray.
Boo-ray. It would have been boo-yeah if the motherfucker had ripped my scalp off. If that is certainly to God, you could at least come up with a justifiable homicide verdict in a court.
Even if there wasn't a fight, if that happened today, would Chris Adams be booked anywhere ever again?
I don't. Well, I'm ever again a garbage championship wrestling.
I don't even think they would want to.
Look at Gage. They got drug addicts and bank robbers. What about a fucking scalper?
If you can't trust the guy in a ring, I think that's what it comes down to.
I know. I'm just laughing at the whole.
What a shame. Chris Adams could have been so fucking good. He was great at his peak, but if he hadn't been a complete drunk, he would have really, really had a good career, but disappointing.
Just terrible. Speaking of disappointing, I don't know how to do this transition, but we heard that Paul Heyman, who is usually, except when the subject is himself and potentially, especially what he's doing modern day, that he's reclusive. He's just not out there talking to everybody. But he talked to old Chris Van Vliet. Why does he have so many V's in his name? Isn't one V enough? How can you have a V that follows a V?
And there's a reporter named Chris Van Cleef, I think it is. I always get the two confused.
Well, and there's an actor named Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm not sure whether Chris Van Vliet is going to fucking shoot Clint Eastwood or not. But nevertheless, Paul Heyman's been talking to him. Well, I'm just telling you, it's confusing in the marketplace. So Paul Heyman's been talking to him, and there were a couple of things, I understand, from what you were telling me that were interesting and pithy, the comments that Paul made about various points in his life.
Yeah, a bunch of the listeners were sending over this interview, and let's give him a plug. Chris Van Vliet, he's on YouTube, and the interview is Paul Heyman on Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, ECW, failed Paul Heyman, guys, Triple H. It's a hell of a title for a video there.
God damn.
But this is the...
that like wrote the whole email in the subject line, didn't it?
And, Paul's done other interviews. He's done Ariel Helwani. This may be the most honest Paul Heyman interview. That's not to say it's completely honest and not to say he's not still doing his character thing, which isn't always what he does on TV. But the amount of stuttering in this, we saw more of the real Paul Heyman in this interview probably than anything else he's done. So let's give Chris Van Vliet some credit for this.
What are you saying? Paul is a stutterer in real life? I never noticed that.
Well, he was stuttering a lot here when trying to come up with it. I noticed it. Not that it's a bad thing or anything, but you would never ever see that.
He was actually trying to halfway be honest and at the same time not completely be honest. I can understand that.
Well, let's go to this. Here's Paul Heyman talking to Chris Van Vliet about something we've talked about in the past and you've talked about it, and here's Paul's version. His discussions with TNA after he left WWE. Let's go to this. We'll stop it along the way. Please jump in with any comments you have. But let's go to this. Chris Van Vliet with Paul Heyman.
Well, at what point did TNA reach out? Was this ever a possibility? No, I didn't ask that.
2010?
Yeah? Were you ever close to working with TNA?
Depends on the perspective of the person that you're asking. You're asking me, was I ever close? I don't know. I certainly told them what my 5-year plan was. And I talked about this on Ariel Helwani's podcast back then. Going to get rid of everybody under over 40. Going to get rid of all the legends. Going to keep one. Back then, they had way too many legends.
At that point, yes.
It was an old-timers game.
Let me stop it there for a moment. Do you agree with that?
Perception, yes. Chronologically, no. I think what he's trying to say, rather than discriminating by age, is that it was all the guys that had been around. Either the ex-WWE guys that were there, some with good intentions, Kurt Angle, Mick Foley, others with questionable work ethic, at least. And basically, I think I would have been more, I see where he's coming from. I would be more judicious in saying, and not having a rule of thumb, I will keep several veteran names that I think that can still work hard and are valuable employees and can contribute, rather than just, one, and get rid of all the other guys, all the older guys. But I see what he wanted to, he's looking at all those guys saying it's too late. They've been seen like this now. He didn't say he'd never bring any of them back. And that's what I keep trying to stress, is that I think Paul's value as a booker especially was keeping guys fresh, because he could see a way to get something out of them and do as much as possible with a little. And at the same time, you've got big egos, big salaries, and with a lot of veterans, they've all been seen, and they're not going to work as hard, and they're not going to do the things you want them to do. So kind of like that, yes.
All right, let's go back to this. Chris Van Vliet with Paul Heyman.
And some of them had years left to give, but they got lumped in with the other veterans, so they seemed older than they were.
And the magic of TNA in that 05 to 09-ish time was a lot of those up-and-comers.
Take a look at that roster.
Oh, my God. Yes.
And what could have been done with them. But instead, they were all playing second fiddle to these big names from the Attitude Era that were no longer relevant or no longer had the cachet to present innovative, progressive storylines that would capture the imagination of a new audience. They had a niche. They served the niche.
Did he just say what I said, but only much more eloquently?
Yes. Well, he's a very political guy. He's very diplomatic.
They were never going to expand from it. Narrowcasting versus broadcasting. I wanted a piece of the company. I wanted the Dana White deal.
Yeah.
And I wanted the ability in 36 months to their CFO was named Dean Broadhead, I believe. And, and to take the company public. I had a...
Let's stop it there for a moment, because there's a big one. Taking TNA public 3 years after.
I wouldn't take Dean Broadhead out in public. So this fucking guy was a moron too. It was a bunch of morons that Dixie Carter assembled because they had run something in some other business that they were going to, the names that you don't know, like a Dean Broadhead that worked in the office it's not like they stole them all from the Titan Sports office roster, or that they'd been major executives or worked in the territories. They were fucking some people from somewhere. So yeah, Paul knew, what the fuck is this?
With Spike TV at the time, wanted their sign off for what I wanted to do creatively, because it wouldn't work without their sign off. Again, having to appease all masters, and also wanted to know if they were willing to buy in. Should we take the company public 3 years after I start my run in the creative process? What it boiled down to was TNA did not want to let go of the legends. Did not want to forsake the appearances by the legends on the television show. Did not want the legends to be fed to the younger guys. So the AJ Styles
didn't want to hurt Sting and Nash's feelings.
And the Samoa Joes and all the young talent that was there was always going to be secondary to the legends. And therefore, you've capped. You're stuck. You've hit the glass ceiling every time. That's it. Can't go any further. And I had already been out of this industry for several years. And if I was going to come back, let alone come back as the booker, head of creative, head of content, however you want to designate that role. If I'm going to come back, I wasn't coming back to fail. And to book the Legends Tour, to me, there was nothing else I could offer them. They had that already down pat. Mazel tov, sei gesund, congratulations. But
hey,
if you want,
can I say something? He's exactly right, but also not wanting to sacrifice the legends. Dixie was enamored of the guys, the bigger the stars they were, and that they could come in and sit with her and talk like a peer to her and tell her, oh, yes, whatever they were telling her. And again, I wouldn't have been as extreme as Paul in that I still think there were more than just a few that had some value, but also that's the thing. You had to use those guys to make the younger guys, and they didn't, or they didn't enough if they were token efforts made. But as well, Paul didn't want to come in and fail. And I think he told them all of those things because he probably knew that it was not going to be given to him. He would have taken it if they had, but he knew that it was not. Because this way, if they did give it to him, that he would work tirelessly and work his ass off to somehow jerry rig or Ponzi scheme something in 36 months that could go public and he could make the Dana White deal. So he would have been on that like ugly on an ape. But if he didn't get that, he didn't expect that to begin with, and it didn't hurt his feelings because he knew that they were not going to give him a piece and all this other stuff, and that he would just be able to call everything and fuck these other people, send them home. But that's what needed to be done. So he had a net either way. He didn't need the job. He didn't expect them to offer it to him under those circumstances. But if he had gotten it, then he would have devoted his entire evil mastery to it. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Let's finish up this question right here.
Well, my input, we're going in a completely different direction. And it's going to be a different style. And it's going to separate itself from what WWE is offering, or all you're getting is WWE Light.
Yeah. And then after that, TNA entered some dark years. Like the storylines were not great. And I'm a huge TNA fan. For so long, there was no competition in wrestling. Now there is. Is wrestling in a better...
All right, let's stop it there. We'll go to this in a second. He's about to be asked about AEW, but that's the end of Paul Heyman's thoughts on TNA. And
what year was it they talked to him? Do you recall offhand?
He said
I've been out of the business a couple of years. Say again?
He said 2010 here.
Okay, that's because that was he left the WWE after the 2006 ECW reunion, correct?
That's right. And
Yeah.
when I was doing Yama Pit Fighting, we had our meeting with Paul Heyman at the summer of 2007, I think. So he was already doing other things and looking for other things to do.
Yeah, and again, that was 2010 is the point where a lot of things had just gone to complete shit. We've been talking about the period of 2006 to 2009. The term I was there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the program. But okay, now Jeff's out of power and all of his people are gone and the Hogan had come in and a blah, blah, blah. And things were headed south quickly.
Well, again, those were Paul's thoughts on TNA. You'd have to think if he had been involved and given 3 years, it would have been a whole lot better than anything else they ever produced again.
Oh, yeah.
But here's his thoughts on AEW. The competitive brand started up several years ago. Anytime any rumors about Paul Heyman, would he go to AEW? Would he go and do this? So we've never really heard him talk about AEW. Let's go to this from his interview with Chris Van Vliet.
Better place now because AEW exists?
Oh, I certainly hope so. I mean, it sure changed the compensation packages for a lot of talent because there was a wolf across the river named Tony Khan that had $1 billion checkbook that he could afford to pay a lot more money for talent than talent was making back in 2017, 2018, 2019. So it certainly changed the compensation for talent, and they're on a viable network. They have a style that's different than WWE's. They present an alternative, if not a competitive brand. I look at AEW and I realize the influence that ECW had on that project, on that product. Not just like, for example, like Moxley is a total ECW Sandman New Jack style performer. But
Hey, let me stop it there real quick.
Well, and that's the thing. Hold on. I just got to say that he's stuttering, trying not to just throw a shovel, right? And every positive point that he made is kind of a positive point, but you can tell he's trying to pick the positive. He doesn't want to just come out and say, but my God, what I could have done with what Paul Heyman and Tony Khan could never work together for the same principle of Bill Watts couldn't work for Vince McMahon because he said there's only room for one Titan in Titan sports. Tony telling Paul about the wrestling business would be like fucking Howie the mailroom guy telling Albert Schweitzer about medicine. And Tony can't let go of his control to let even the ultimate expert, lead the way. So anyway, but I just, he's trying to be nice, Paul is.
And he compared Moxley to New Jack and the Sandman. Meltzer took issue with that, and the Observer said it's more like Terry Funk.
Oh, God damn
But
it.
you got to remember, Heyman was in the meeting when Moxley pitched all that garbage shit to wrestle Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Remember? We heard about that?
Well, yeah, New Jack and Sandman applies. It's a fucking kind of a freak show thing. New Jack, Sandman got over completely because Paul pushed him because Sandman's a drunk that really couldn't do anything. He didn't have a physique. He couldn't really cut a great promo. He looked like shit and he couldn't work. Jack could talk his ass off. But if that's you could put Moxley in that category. Yes, not Terry Funk, a legitimate all-around talent.
if you look at the AEW style. It's Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn from 1999.
What a match.
AEW is RVD. And if you were a fan of what RVD and Jerry Lynn were doing in 1999, a lot of what AEW presents today is derived and is influenced by what RVD and Jerry Lynn were doing.
It is copycatted.
Well, that style went in.
It is imitated and is done by guys who trained themselves on their trampolines.
Into like the
But
PWG.
he could say that, but he doesn't. I'm sorry.
Which then became, I think, a basis for what AEW is doing now.
So am I glad that they're there? Absolutely. Love the fact that there is an alternative for an audience. Love the fact that there's something else out there. Love the fact that there's something that captures the imagination of the pro wrestling / sports entertainment, if we still use that phrase today, audience. I'm glad. I wish there were more promotions out there right now. It's just going to make us work harder to be better than all of them. And we certainly have the advantage in terms of distribution and in terms of lineage of this industry.
All right. Well, on those buzzwords, we'll
and again, you can't disagree with anything that Paul says.
No.
He doesn't want to just dip into it because he knows that some of these guys at some point are coming there that he can take and work with and mold and pickpocket and do all the other things he does. And he doesn't want to piss any of them off, or he would say they're all fucking copying the shit that we used to do. They just don't do it as well. But that's, he is very eloquent at describing the things that, can be positive about the product without having to rip everybody apart. But you can also tell that he's like, Jesus Christ, if only I could have found his father's bumper fucking patent or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that. Actually, a lot. Jim, one more thing on here, and we could tackle this today, I guess. Chris Van Vliet, and again, this is a good interview. People should check it out. Chris Van Vliet with Paul Heyman. He asked about the rumors that Vince McMahon was funding ECW, and we've talked about this in the past because you were in the office when whatever started, correct?
Right. Well, and I was at Vince's house. That was a writing day. Somehow or another, we had just got Too Cold Scorpio, and Paul had complained to Bruce, "God, it's you, he's my guy." And Bruce went to Vince and said, "Well, we've taken a couple of guys that he was using," and Vince said, "Put him on a payroll for $1,000 a week because we took his guys." I basically boiled down a 15-minute conversation into Vince saying that, and they called up and put Paul on the payroll for $1,000 or ECW. He said Paul. I don't know if Paul took it in some type of holding company, offshore bank account, whatever, for $1,000 a week because we took some of his guys, which was a nice thing and an old-fashioned kind of promoter to promoter thing to do. But Paul still kept cutting the promos in public and to his boys. Fuck this fucking fuck these guys. That's what I had the problem for. I was like, I didn't need to cut anti-WWF promos and Smoky Mountain Wrestling while I was working with the WWF because it was another wrestling promotion that we could work with. If Paul wanted to work with the WWF, that's fine. But don't be cutting. And if it was a fucking work deal, cut the promos on the company to the fans, that's fine. But don't be telling the boys, fuck these people, when you're getting paid because they took some of your talent. That was a favor that didn't have to be done.
Well, with that preface, let's go to this from the Chris Van Vliet interview with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman about rumors of Vince McMahon funding ECW. We'll break this up along the way.
For years, there have been these rumors online that Vince McMahon was funding ECW. What's the story there? And when did this begin?
It's like a lot of stories coming out of ECW that they take on a life of their own.
Yeah.
And here's the truth of it. There were 3 instances of a financial influx from WWE / Vince McMahon into ECW. No more than 3. The narrative that ECW was secretly funded by Vince McMahon or Vince McMahon or WWE is complete bullshit. In 1996, I had a deal with Tommy Boy Records. I had been pirating their music on the air. Like most record labels, I got a cease and desist. I ignored the cease and desist. Then I got a dunning letter saying, stop this immediately. And by the way, we're preparing to sue you. I went in to meet with them without any lawyers on my side, because if I could afford lawyers, I could afford a settlement. Told them, hey, here's the past year of finances for ECW. We're about to go bankrupt. You sue me, I go into an involuntary bankruptcy. Nothing I can do to help you or help myself. However, I do have this platform.
By the way, timeout. Again, Paul is whatever this is, he's the best in the world at it. He could somehow figure out a way. Remember refunding the airplane tickets in the office in WCW, or the goddamn until caller ID becoming a common thing. It fucking hammered him when he could call and somehow make people think he was in different states. And he's the best in the world.
I know a lawyer who had Paul Heyman in his waiting room one day while meeting with a wrestler about something, and he swears that Paul Heyman hacked his voicemail, like somehow got in there and went through all the messages. And I have no reason to doubt him, but he swears that Paul Heyman did that.
It's just, he has been able, remember the goddamn the Flexo, what was it? Solaflex, that thing, the fucking per inquiry TV spots where he was making thousands of dollars by having all of his stooges call up and order a Solaflex catalog. And every time for all of their friends and everybody in their address book, and ECW would get $5 each. He can get out of anything, fully intending never to fucking pay anybody or never to do anything.
And a lot of people like our show. So if you let me use the music and I give you commercial time on our show, because I own some of the commercial time throughout the syndication of ECW, I can promote your music and you can let me use it and we can both win. And I did that with a lot of record labels, to the point where in 2000, the biggest behind the scenes name in music, Jimmy Iovine, who was the co-chairman of Universal Music Group at the time with Doug Morris, which was Geffen, A&M, and Interscope.
By the way, as someone who was in the business around his time, it's fascinating to listen to him name check the top executives of the music industry, but let's go back to this.
Under Universal Music, became the final investor in ECW before we went out of business. In terms of WWE, I had the deal with Tommy Boy Records for $1,000 a week for them to supply us with Whoop, There It Is for Too Cold Scorpio. Every time he came out to the ring, you'd see that MTV-style lower third, Whoop, There It Is by this group, Tommy Boy Records. And then the very next commercial break, in first position, we would either thank Tommy Boy Records while playing Tommy Boy music, or we would have a commercial for the newest release by Tommy Boy music.
Let me just stop for a second.
He's great. Again, he's great. He's a genius at this shit. He's a genius at this shit.
$1,000 a week. Vince wanted Doug Furnace, Phil LaFon, Terry Gordy to be the executioner, and he wanted Too Cold Scorpio to come to WWE as Flash Funk. I had no problem with any of those talents going to WWE. My problem was in losing Too Cold Scorpio, I could lose the $1,000 a week from Tommy Boy Records. Vince said, I'll make that $1,000 up to you. Deal. He didn't, his words, don't want to be like WCW, just poach your talent and give you nothing back for it. Want to support the cause.
This is the truth. Mark it down, folks.
Need $1,000 a week. Okay, great. And if Tommy Boy keeps paying you, you keep that extra grand. Great. The first check came, was in my name. I sent it back. Please make it out to the parent company of ECW, HHG. We got $1,000 a week from November 1996 till we filed for bankruptcy in March 2001.
Let me stop it there for a moment before we go on to the next thing. So again, this is a period of time you were in the office, you were involved with the creative process, you were going to Vince's house. Is anything Paul Heyman saying not matching up with what you know? And again, he's going from the other side. He was the person.
Yeah, no. I mean, I didn't know or care what his record deals were and the sponsorship thing that he had worked out as a settlement for stealing people's music and then telling them that he had no money and he would just go bankrupt if they tried to sue him. That whole thing I was not in on, but the basic facts of the matter is that, yes, he is telling the truth. Vince McMahon started giving Paul Heyman and or ECW $1,000 a week at that point in 1996, because Vince took the talent.
That was the $1,000 a week. In 2000, we got a $500,000 loan in July.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The reason behind that was we had gone on TNN in September 1999. Unbeknownst to us, TNN, which was the Nashville network, was becoming the national network. But what we didn't know was that they had already been sold to Viacom, which was the parent company of CBS. Viacom had already cut a deal behind the scenes with WWE for WWE to leave USA Network, which was then owned by Barry Diller, and go to TNN the next September, which became a big federal court case in Delaware. So we were the guinea pig for TNN to be on the air and see how professional wrestling translates on their network, which was undergoing a massive overhaul. I knew 3 weeks into that agreement, this is going to kill us, because all of our commercials, which was supposed to be spread out throughout the week, would air on our own show. So I'm watching the show on Friday nights, and there's our commercials instead of being on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights. And I called the president of TNN, and I said, why are our commercials airing on our own show? And he said, it's the target demographic.
Let's stop there for a moment.
Hey, it's a different variation on stories that I've told. You can't. TV people, they can put you on top of the mountain or they can fuck you around. And this is the kind of shit that you have to deal with. And again, that's why, to me, Paul should have had a nervous break 30 years ago, trying to do a national promotion, having to deal with these network people, when it aggravated me bad enough having to deal with the fucking NBC affiliate in Bristol, Virginia. But this is the kind of shit you get. Yeah, of course they're the target demographic. They're already watching the show. The commercials for ECW are to alert people who don't know the show is on and might want to watch it on such and such night and time, not people who are already aware. How are if you're watching this show now and you don't want to watch it anymore, how is the commercial for it going to make you want to watch it?
It's sabotage.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, it's self-sabotage. But let's go back to Chris Van Vliet with Paul Heyman.
In other words, fuck you, you're out of business. And we're using you and you don't know why yet. So at some point, it became known that WWE was trying to move to TNN. And any analysis of the situation was TNN was the albatross around our neck that was going to sink us. And TNN was a gold mine for WWE because the licensing money for wrestling on television wasn't that great back then. And the tens and tens of millions of dollars that TNN was willing to give WWE was unheard of at the time. It was a huge deal. And at some point in putting us out of business, the bankruptcy trustee was going to end up suing TNN and WWE for having this deal while we were on the air with TNN. Whether it's tortious interference or whatever the claims would have been, it would have been another federal lawsuit against a publicly traded company in WWE.
Let me stop it there for a second. This is all fascinating to listen to.
And again, he's like the Earl Stanley Gardner of wrestling fucking legal drama. Paul, again, how many times did he sue WCW?
Or threaten to sue. I don't know if did he ever actually sue or did he threaten to sue?
I think he threatened to sue 2 or 3 times. He may have had to file something at one point, but whether it's he can figure out a way where you didn't have the right to fire me, or you did, even when he was an independent contractor, you didn't have the right to fire me, or you interfered with my trademark on such and such, or you whatever. He can figure out a way to sue for anything and then settle for something. And conversely, whenever he does something, he can figure out a way to tell the people that he's offended that there's no way that they're ever going to get anything out of it, but they can work together on something and both of them can benefit.
And again, we'll play the rest of this audio of him talking about Vince McMahon and WWE funding ECW. It is important to note, as charming and entertaining as he is here, there were a lot of wrestlers hurt during this period of time where ECW was out of money, the future looked bleak. Paul knew that things were going to happen. He knew about WWE's involvement, but there was a lot of talent that weren't fully aware or apprised of what was going on, and they were the ones running up their credit cards. They were the ones putting their houses on the line. So it's not brought up here, but I do think it's important to mention.
I do honestly believe, I think Paul always thought he could keep all the plates spinning forever. At the end, he would be dead before anybody ever asked him to pay for anything.
Let's go back to this Chris Van Vliet with Paul Heyman.
Back in 2000, there was an executive at In Demand whose name I will call out publicly, named Dan York. And Dan York saw the fact that we were fighting for our life in terms of our network distribution on TNN. Knowing that if we lose network distribution, the odds of us staying alive were now slimming down. Our pay-per-view money slowed down as well. So instead of getting all this money 60 days, 90 days after the pay-per-view, we got a little bit 60 days and 90 days after the pay-per-view. And we even got a little less, 120 days and 180 days. We're supposed to be completely paid out by 180 days. We weren't paid out 50% by 180 days. So we weren't getting our money out of In Demand because they figured they could deal with the bankruptcy trustee instead of having to pay us now. They did the same thing to Bob Arum. Bob Arum had the resources to sue and wait a few years to get that settled. We didn't have the time. The clock was ticking on us. We booked a show at the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, Heatwave 2000, 6,000, however many tickets. We sold out within the first hour, and I didn't have enough money to put on a show.
Wait a minute, hold on now. Pump the brakes. Do you remember, Brian, him selling out the Olympic Auditorium in an hour? I'm not denying they might have got 6,000 people or whatever, but help.
I remember they had a successful crowd there. I don't know anything about the details for how long it took to sell those tickets. I don't know.
Well, and of course, promoter exaggeration, but go ahead.
Pay-per-views were successful enough that we did 3 the first year, 1997, 4 in 1998, 6 in 1999, and they ordered 7 in 2000. It's $250,000 just for the satellite truck and the satellite feed. So the production on a pay-per-view show back then was at least $250,000 and all in close to $500,000.
Jesus Christ. As Mama Cornette used to say, he bit off more than he could chew. And I got, again, at the amounts of money when he started with caca, with nothing, there was no big major investor besides Todd Gordon owning a jewelry store. And talk about getting out in front of your skis. I'm not talking about Paul being a bad booker or I'm talking about him being a bad businessman. Because I would not have been able to sleep at night knowing that I was on the hook for fucking spending that much money, whether it was my money or somebody else's. And it would stress me enough when I would go, oh gosh, that Knoxville show, holy mackerel. If, $5,000 or $10,000 was involved, we would have make sure we take as much care of Rick Rubin's money as possible. And, blah, blah, blah. But he's just putting this shit together out of paper clips and duct tape, isn't he?
And, every now and then we'll hear from fans, typically younger fans who are just discovering Smoky Mountain Wrestling or wrestling from the 90s, and they'll say, would it have saved Smoky Mountain if Jim had gone on pay-per-view? What if you were able to take that and air it in other places? Beyond the fact that you didn't have TV nationwide and there were all sorts of problems, just the cost alone would have been prohibitive.
Of course, that's why I never thought of it. Never in my wildest dreams or would have wanted to. It wasn't what it was there for.
Let's go back to this. Paul Heyman's conversation with Chris Van Vliet about Vince McMahon's funding of ECW.
And we didn't have it. We couldn't clear payroll at the time. How am I going to put on that show? Meanwhile, I've sold 6,000 tickets in Los Angeles, but I can't get that money till after the show because Ticketmaster holds it on till the show is over. Holds on to it till the show is over. I had a meeting with Vince. I looked at him straight in the face and I said, I can't put on this show. If I can't put on the show, I'm going to be in breach of my contract with In Demand. They're going to pull my pay-per-views, which means then we're dead in the water. I'll end up in bankruptcy and you'll be dealing with a trustee. Or you can loan me the money.
And you had a good relationship with Vince at the time.
Excellent. I had a great relationship with Vince until I went to work for him. And that's when we started butting heads. And
hey, hold on here. You know what? God damn it. Vince treated me like a goddamn visiting dignitary when I was coming in from Smoky Mountain doing the TVs to pay-per-views. But once I showed up at his actual fucking house, I was one of the goddamn field hands. It's the same thing.
I can't complain ultimately with my run with Vince McMahon. But at first, wow, was it a difference in working for him instead of being on the outside and working with him. Went to Vince, explained it to him. He looked, he said, well, you need $500,000. Yes. And to his credit, for his shareholders, he said, well, I'll need a UCC1, which means he stands in front of all the other creditors, which means if we were to go into bankruptcy, the trustee would not have the ability to make the claim against Vince McMahon, WWE, TNN, et cetera, because I've signed that away with the loan. So he settles a case before it's ever filed for $500,000. That $500,000 bought us another 7 months of being alive because we weren't going to survive that July without that $500,000. So he did a secured priority loan for $500,000. At the very end, Christmas week 2000, when everything was dire, we had lost TNN. The money is now trickling in from In Demand. Now In Demand wants 8 pay-per-views in 2001. We don't even have national television. WWE says, let's look at the books, because Shane wanted to buy it. So Shane wanted to buy ECW and run it on its own. Vince said, it's easier just to let it go into bankruptcy, and we get Heyman. Shane still pushed. So
let me stop it there for a second. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, this is, again, it's sharks eating sharks at this point. Shane wanted to, in those days, Shane assumed that he would be the heir to Vince's seat, and he wanted to get promotional experience, whether it's he wanted to buy ECW, he wanted to buy UFC. He wanted to buy he just wanted to buy something so he could run it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But so that's, again, factual. And Vince says, no, let's not fuck him this way. Let's fuck him that way. And we'll get a better deal. And it's just, I've never been in a position where I could say, well, if If I just had $500,000, I could get through the next 6 months.
Shane still pushed and pushed and pushed. So for the accountants to take a look at all the books and to buy us the time not to be pulled into an involuntary bankruptcy by somebody, we will loan $83,500 to make payroll that week so that we can survive the week.
Hey, ho!
For W.
$83,500. Wow.
$80,000 a week? Holy Christ. That's 160. That's 320. He was paying talent over $4 million, or supposed to pay talent over $4 million a year.
Could that be just for that week? Could it be for a 2-week payroll, or maybe we're catching up for the last month? That seems excessively high.
Well, but when you think about, it is to me, because I think the average Smoky Mountain payroll was about $4,000 a show, less on the spot shows, maybe more on a big Knoxville event. But he was apparently owing, when they closed, Van Dam 6 figures, and a variety of other guys a lot of money. So I don't know. Jesus.
WWE to look at the books. And those were the 3 payments: the $1,000 per week, every week through bankruptcy, the $500,000 loan in July 2000, the $83,000, I think it was that, $83,000 or $88,500 in December 2000. There was no other payments made by WWE. There was no other secret funding. And this is all a matter of public record, because WWE was a publicly traded company by this time. And it's all there. And it's all in the bankruptcy papers. But never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Why didn't Shane end up buying ECW?
Vince found it more valuable to have me in the, as Vince would say, I'd rather have Paul Heyman in the castle pissing out than out of the castle pissing in. It's the same move that Apple made in buying Beats. Apple didn't need Beats. Apple wanted Jimmy Iovine. Vince McMahon was tired of me being out on my own, being an independent, doing my own thing, decided we need Heyman, and wanted Heyman involved. And to get Heyman, you had to at least secure the assets of ECW, or promise the bankruptcy court to secure the assets of ECW so that there's a curator for our library. And along with that comes Paul Heyman.
Well, there it is. Paul Heyman talking about WWE's funding, limited funding, I guess you could say, of ECW. And again, this whole interview with Chris Van Vliet is really good. People should check it out. It's on YouTube. But what are your final thoughts on the ECW-WWE relationship and the idea that what Vince wanted all along was really just Paul Heyman?
Well, at the end, what else was there particularly? And I think Vince wanted an alliance. He tried it with me. He wanted an alliance with somebody else under certain circumstance where he could potentially get some talent, or have me out there directing my guys north instead of south to Atlanta, and the things that we've talked about. And Paul put that thing together with toothpaste and spit, and had a bigger overall reach by that point. So Vince wanted, okay, he's on our side. He can, especially Paul, can direct people to do things, as we've established. He can be feeding us guys. We've got him on our side, and we have him where we can keep an eye on him. But that is a Vince McMahon expression. Rather have him in the castle pissing out than out pissing in. So all that is, Paul is very honest here, especially for Paul. It's just that I'm just astonished at the gall of him, as Jackie Fargo would say. It would have made me a nervous wreck to owe that many people that much money and be that far out on a cliff for what I was doing for that fucking long. Because you know how crazy it drove me to a fraction of this amount of money to be lost. So bravo. No wonder he looks like that now, and I look like this.
Oh, come on now. We don't have to start throwing your insults here at the end. This is a good interview.
It's not an insult. What did I say that was insulting? I said he looks like that, and I look like this.
Well, what the hell is that supposed to mean if it's not an insult? What would that mean?
That's a factual statement. He looks like he looks, and I look like I look. There's no slander there. Is there?
No, he looks like that, and you look like this. To your point.
Well, that's right. And I'll tell you what, it's because I don't owe and never have owed that many people that much money. And also because whereas Brian Paulie generally tries to cover his ass, I was more of the person to just clean my ass rather than cover it. If I kept my ass clean, then I figured that nobody would have a problem with me and I wouldn't have no problems with nobody back. So I didn't have to cover up my ass because I was cleaning my ass. And Brian, are you aware that the state of the art, the science of ass cleaning is now at a revolutionary period in history? Never before has it become this easy to wash your ass and crotch as it is today. Did you know about that?
Are we still talking about Paul Heyman and ECW? What are we talking about here? I did.
Yes, well, we're talking about, because of Paul's covering his ass and me keeping my ass clean. That was the difference in our personalities. And then that made me think of the incredible advancements in the science of ass cleaning. No more clogged toilets. 80% less toilet paper use. And that helps the environment too. 99% of the bacteria that lives down there in between your crackles can be washed away. Do you want to know, Brian, how these miracle things can happen all for a very low, low price? Our friends at Tushy. Tushy, I want to say that enough because a lot of people don't know that that's a brand. They just think it's a part of your anatomy. But if you go to Hello Tushy with a Y, TUSHY.com, you'll find that it's a brand that now makes, Brian, a lot of people also aren't aware that the word bidet is pronounced bidet instead of bidet because it's spelled B-I-D-E-T. Now, you may have heard about this.
I've heard about that.
It's bidet because it's French. And the French know about keeping a clean ass because they're down there grazing all the time, those French people. They even named wallering your tongue around like two anteaters having a goddamn MMA fight French kissing. So they want shit to be cleaned off before they start going down there and going to town.
Well,
and Tushy
will
now transform your bathroom wellness for life from gut to butt to bowl. That is their motto. Dude, that's exactly
their motto.
That's their motto. You can soothe. Now, this is not a laughing matter for the people with the itching and the irritation and the micro tears. You can soothe your bottom instantly with warm water that never runs cold, like your partner's emotions. 99% of the people who wash with Tushy warm water bidets feel cleaner and fresher after going to the bathroom. And that's even if they've just gone into a bar or bathroom somewhere to give a stray blowjob. But they still feel somehow cleaner when they come out. Tushy e-bidets, it's an e-bidet, e-bidet, e-bidet. And you could use an e-bidet any day. They instantly modernize your daily routine and your bathroom with a heated seat, adjustable water temperature, and a powerful yet gentle dryer. I'll tell you what, and I enjoyed it too, but I had a problem when I was trying to use the dryer to dry my hair. When I was bending over, sticking my head in the toilet bowl, while it was drying the sides of my head, the top of my hair was still getting wet. I don't think I was doing it right.
I don't think you were doing anything right. I don't think this is being done right. We have to talk about Tushy, and of course...
Well, every Tushy bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing, although you can have the plumber come over because chances are with that plumber's crack, he's going to need to wash that nasty ass too. But the e-bidets only require an outlet, an electric outlet, not an outlet for your frustrations. But it's hard to be frustrated, folks, when you've got water being shot up your sphincter.
Listen, all kidding and joking aside, Jim, and of course,
well, we'll start doing that in a minute.
It is something that is easy to laugh about. The kids have found it pretty funny that we have a sponsor named Tushy here in the house. But, a lot of you out there I know are single and looking to meet someone, going out to the bars, the clubs, and trying to meet someone. Maybe you're not looking to meet anyone and you're an incel going to AEW. Whatever it may be, here's some advice. You got to wash your ass. No girl wants to go home with someone and get stink ass. You got to wash your ass, and Tushy's a way that you can do that. And somehow we're back on track.
Well, because that's the bidet gives you the 2-in-1 benefits. It reduces irritation and prevents micro tears. Did you know when you wipe instantly with toilet paper, especially that cheap stuff, well, it produces micro tears in your fucking amoeba down there, your membranes and thing, and you become insane in your membrane. But now you could just sit there and you just boom and it just shoots and then you just dry. It's hands free. So you could just sit there and just shit all day long and use up to 80% less toilet paper. So right there, that's going to save you money and also not clog up the bowl as much. Every Hello Tushy comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. So I think without further ado, wash your nasty ass and you can get 10% off your very first order. Why would you order again? Well, you've got more than one. Just get 3 of them for all 3 of your toilets or however many.
Multiple toilets, yes.
But you get 10% off on your first order when you use the code JCE at checkout at hellotushy.com. The promo code is JCE for 10% off. Go to hellotushy.com. You'll see all the information on how it can, just be wonderful if you redirect that a little bit. Woo-hoo-hoo. Boy, howdy.
Once again, something great that can help you stay clean. And also some of you, as a gift, you may have some friends that stink like ass. This is a great way to help everyone, yourself, and the community.
It soothes hemorrhoids and cures hoarseness, but it soothes hemorrhoids. So maybe these people are not stinky or smelling or, in poor hygiene. They got an ailment. So you could help them out with that too.
Well, Jim, it says here 3 million butts love Tushy. And of course, we have a great deal for the listeners.
I'm just wild about Tushy, and Tushy's wild about me. It'll keep your bunghole smelling good and Klingon free. Yeah, I'm just wild about Tushy right now. Just go there and do that.
Yes. Once again,
yes.
hellotushy.com/JCE for a very special deal for the listeners.
Well, coming out of Tushy, Brian, I figure we ought to stay in the bowels at least and talk about TNA wrestling. And no, we haven't gone crazy. We're not talking about TNA today. We're talking about TNA back when it was somewhat interesting. At least it was interesting behind the scenes at this point, back at the first part of 2007. We are going to continue. I teased when we'd been talking about the agent reports that I was actually not even agent reports. These were the first period of time when I started in TNA and I was giving Jeff Jarrett my typewritten, I wasn't emailing then, my typewritten thoughts on the TV shows. And we've been going through those for the end of 2006 when I was first there. And then we've talked about in the past. Then our friend, Mr. Russo, came back. And I'd teased that I'd written a letter to Jeff about the situation. And we're going to read that today. And also one of the impact reports that I did for January 2007, which kind of illustrates things that I'm talking about in the letter. And I want to clarify something we did in an earlier clip. Brian, remember when I talked about talking to Dutch and Jeff in person and just saying, hey, I'll finish up for right now. I don't want to be around a guy, blah, 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 right? Somebody said, Well, Jim Cornette could have quit if he wanted to. He just didn't have to go. Well, let me flesh that part of the conversation out a little bit. Dutch had called me on the phone and told me that they'd hired the guy back. And the reason why they had Dutch call me was because they knew I wouldn't yell at Dutch. I would yell to Dutch, but not at Dutch. And I thought about it. And then the next week or whenever the next taping was, and I was there in person, I sat down with Jeff and Dutch in the little room on the left when you first go into the fucking building there at the Universal Studios. And I said, look, this is going to get in the way of business. Not only will I never agree with anything that he says, thinks, or does about the wrestling business, I don't like him. I don't want to be around him. I think he's going to kill the fucking company. and as plainly as I could state it. And I said, I'll finish up. I don't want it to get in the way. So have Abyss give me the black hole slam. And in 3 months or so, when you've realized what you've done, I'll come back. Because I didn't at the time know. And it really, now that this Dark Side of the Ring, and we talked to Evan Husty a couple weeks ago, that clip is on the YouTube channel, coming up on this 3-parter on TNA wrestling and all the behind the scenes drama. Jeff was trying to do the same thing that he did with his father, trying to have me around to balance the fucking idiot out, because I didn't know that Dixie at the time was fascinated for whatever reason with Russo. And now I was, as I've said, I never had a conversation past, hi, Dixie, boy, hot today, isn't it? Because she never came and asked my opinion on anything, and I never had occasion to go and ask hers. I was there to work for Jeff Jarrett. She was the money backer. I understood that. But what, I'm going to go get her advice on a goddamn finish? And I don't know what she would have come and asked me. Probably wouldn't have liked the answer. But nevertheless, so I told him that, and Jeff's reply was, no, we're not going to accept your resignation. You're booked. We want you to come. We don't want you to leave. If you don't show up, you're no-showing. His grandmother gave me my first job of any kind, not just in the wrestling business. His father got me in the wrestling business. I've got the opportunity to help him with his company. And it's a fucking 6-figure a year fucking position. And I've made my feelings abundantly clear at that point. I'm like, why the fuck should I quit? Because they're dumb enough to hire this son of a bitch. And they won't even let me. So fuck it, I'll stay here. And I've warned them, it's going to get in the way. Brad, was there anything else I could fucking do? I wasn't going behind anybody's back.
I mean, you could have quit. I mean, that's the only other thing you could have done. You could have just said, no, Jeff, you're not pulling this with me. I'm sorry. You guys are making a colossal mistake, and everyone in wrestling knows this, and I certainly know this, and the talent are all about to know this. And if I had a crystal ball, I would tell you TNA's never going to recover ever again. And in fact,
ever again,
later, WWE will be about to purchase them because of all this. I personally think Jeff took advantage of the fact that you are a nice guy and that you do want to do the right thing and that you do have proper sentimental feelings for what his family has done for you. I think he took advantage of that. And
just a little goddamn honesty also I had. But anyway, so I figured, well, 3 months, whatever. So I'm going to give you this is the next one in the line that we were reading, but just for the purposes of everybody listening here, this is it says TNA Impact January 18th, 2007, but then my next one is for January 24th, so maybe I mistyped. Whenever it at January 17 or 18, whatever. But listen to this guy. You've heard some of the other ones, right? But listen to this goddamn deal. And by the way, this is 6 segments, so we were still an hour. They open with Sting. In parentheses, I wrote Steve beating up Jim Mitchell, the Sinister Minister. Performance-wise, great-looking fight. Mitchell surprisingly good. Creatively, this was totally filled with holes, even from a we all know it's a work view. Man jumps, beats up, kidnaps a man in an empty parking lot, and attracts no notice except for a camera crew with a chase car that don't even yell stop or call the cops. Then the announcers call it seriously without questioning any of this. And throughout the show, we keep following it in progress with no thought of even a weak Sting hired the camera explanation is just part of the show. That was the open. Pay-per-view recap package. Great update on the finish without really giving them all away for free. This type of package might be good for every pay-per-view. Open, pyro, etc. LAX entrance. No Conan. They look alone. A gang with no gang. B-roll of the pay-per-view finish. Santa Runt. Remember we talked about that at the pay-per-view. Just kills the visual for me. 3D hit hot from the back door. This was Bubba's idea, and it worked great and good brawl early. And here's the thing. Bubba Ray and I have had a checkered relationship. We have screamed and cussed at each other in TNA over shit that they did and shit that I had to yell at them about and shit that he yelled me back about. But at the same time, he's not a complete idiot, especially when it comes to his own shit. He knows how to get over, obviously, sometimes at other people's expense, but he's also very indie fucking minded. Nevertheless, good brawl early. Runt this time showed up early, and Bubba insisted on taking Runt all the way out and being gone so long he looked foolish for it. But it proved it took 2 LAXs to beat up 1 3D, wink, wink. Horrible cold tag as neither heel made a move to stop it. Bubba moves great for a fat guy. The fuck finish seemed to get LAX a little heat, but it was all over in 3 minutes. All they did was a finish. There was no match in front of it. LAX needs someone at ringside. And then we go to Abyss backstage on the Rampage. He did it great, but another guy screaming with the announcers screaming about it. That's the first segment. Brian, what do you think?
I think you should have quit. I think you should have quit.
Well, hold on, there's more. Segment 2. We open in the girls' bathroom.
Nah, this is some classic Russo. It already sounds like it.
I'm telling you, Gail, Kim, and Jackie fighting and screaming. They had a hell of a fight. Any angle on this show would have gotten over if it was the only one for the next 10 minutes or so. Just too much here. The cameras can't accidentally find the fight first every freaking time. Then they go to a Christy Hemme sit down and pay-per-view recap package. Hemme is telling the babyface story while being an obvious whiny word I can't say on YouTube anymore, while Billy Gunn is being a prick male chauvinist who is clearly presented as the babyface. So again, Russo's, what do they call it, misogynistic view of women in general, and they're all fighting in the bathroom and they're all whiny bitches. We'll put that word in there. But it's the same point. She was telling a babyface story, but her voice and just her delivery was so obnoxious. And Billy Gunn is being like the Andrew Dice Clay of things, but he's presented as the babyface. Like Osprey, like wanted to splooge all over his fucking anyway. Then we go to Christian Cage in the ring. Calls out Kurt Angle, pay-per-view match. This was a good confrontation until Kurt blanked on the name of the pay-per-view and went south. Cage had to, I swear to God, Cage had to tell such a convoluted story of teasing the identity of the consultant, but he'll give clues. Then Kurt starts guessing like Opie asking Aunt B what kind of pie for supper. They lost me, and then they broke into a fight and Cage bailed. Then they went to video of Sting beating on Mitchell some more to the break. Mitchell is the toughest man in TNA.
Yeah, really. Yeah, really. He's been getting beat for a while now, hasn't he?
Well, wait, we're coming up on Seg 3. Sting, now he's captivated. He's kidnapped. He hadn't captivated anybody. He's kidnapped this son of a bitch and taken him away and tied him up and held him for ransom. Now we come up, he is beating and choking Abyss's real name out of Mitchell. These were actually great performances by the talent of completely preposterous material. This could not actually happen in any kind of real-life professional sport, entertainment company, or television network. And I think people think it's hokey and don't connect with it in a money-paying way. Anyway, more people fighting and screaming at each other. We go to the desk where the announcer, and here's another thing, because this show was not done live to tape or broadcast live, it was put together in post. So it oftentimes, even if you read through it in the production meeting, you wouldn't know here is a man choking and beating a fucking another man until he admits the real name or whatever. And then the announcers are at the desk. They're just having to come up cold and react to something they haven't seen. So when we go to the desk and it says, announcers reacting as if they'd just seen the weather report, not shocked or surprised and teasing more of the criminal assault may come later. Then we go to Paparazzi Productions. And that was whatever the fuck Nash was doing with the X Division guys. I said, when I watch these, I know they're speaking English because I recognize the words, but I don't get it. And I don't know what it is they're supposed to be telling me. Austin Starr, that was Austin Aries, attacks Senshi. That was low key, right?
Yeah.
And they fight, scream, and bash each other into the trailer. Stiff fight, wrong show. Then we go to a bumper with a replay of the girls fighting and screaming in the bathroom and a tease of more fighting and screaming from them later on. Seg 4, Kurt Angle up in Jim Cornette's face, screaming at him about Cage. It's the sad commentary of this TV program that the only motherfucker all night who told anyone to calm down and keep quiet was Jim Cornette. The Lance Hoyt entrance, James Storm and Miss Tennessee entrance. I think they had they made Jackie Miss Texas? Had they made her Miss Tennessee? I can't remember. I like Storm's heel attitude and facials. Hoyt versus Storm, and Lance Hoyt's Lance Archer, right? So, Jumpstart. Storm very animated. Hoyt has good fire. In 30 seconds, they do the heat spot manager distraction. Storm was great for 45 seconds. Then right at Hoyt's comeback, AJP. Yes. AJP and Torborg walked inside the rail unmolested, as apparently all the fans are allowed to do. It was a baseball player, and that Dale Torborg, and AJP was a baseball player fellow.
Oh, AJ Przinsky.
There you have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So they stepped on Hoyt's comeback, did a half-assed distraction, an awkwardly executed duck spot, chair shot behind the referee's back, super kick, and 1, 2, 3 in 2 fucking minutes. That was the match. But wait. The White Sox jump Hoyt on the floor at the same time Gail Kim jumps Jackie on the other side. Storm attacks her and gives her a move that should paralyze a 120-pound girl for life. The Sox are still kicking Hoyt and autographing his head with Sharpies. While wait, Petey Williams makes a big save but gets nut-shotted and super kicked and left laying. All this happens in 80 seconds, and the announcers give a big up-tempo pitch to the back and Jeremy Borash like he was Frank fucking Sinatra. My fucking God, this went across the line into parody of pro wrestling. It was like watching TV on speed search. I have no idea who's on whose side. Each individual talent's performance in all this were good to great, but there was no way it could all register, just bedlam. And they closed Seg 4 with Jeremy Borash with Eric Young doing condom comedy. And AJ Styles runs him off and to me did a better promo here than some I've seen. Your thoughts so far? Would you like to hear segment 5?
You know, you're coexisting with Russo during this period of time. Was it ever brought up? It must have. Just, there's too much going on. That one of the things that works in wrestling is something happens and then you really drive that point home over and over again for a little while, not just constant chaos involving everyone on the roster, every single person.
That point had been made to this guy, what was this, 2007? 10 years before. Segment 5. Sting and the camera crew pulling up. I wish OJ had Sting's luck.
What?
Well, they found him. They couldn't find Sting. AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle in Seg 5. Okay. I was not really a fan of having these guys' first ever singles meeting in a cold match on free TV, but for the time they had, it was a good match. This was where everybody got amnesia, but edited together, it seemed to me it did what it was supposed to do. Tomko came to ringside for the heat spot and break in 2.5 minutes. So AJ Styles and Kurt Angle in their first match on free TV, they go 2.5 minutes, they go to the break, they come back up. I said, back up in a wrestling hold, first time tonight. AJ hits 2 nice false finishes. Nice chair spot to the finish. Good pop on the 1, 2, 3. Then the magic edits. And there was this massive run-in, obviously, if you know who's writing this shit. But they basically had a 3-minute match, and then the run-ins, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but apparently they all fell apart. But they made magic edits. Tomko, Cage, and AJ attack Angle. Rhino hits and takes out AJ. Joe hits and run off Samoa Joe hits and runs off Cage and Tomko. Cage teases a clue. Joe and Angle get in each other's faces. Security hits the ring, all in 90 seconds. Then the announcers say, we'll hear from Sting right after this video wrap-up, in an awkward moment in show flow history. And then they did a VTR of their adrenaline rush spot that recapped all the chaos that was a blur the first time again. Then, this is in capital letters, Brian. Then the worst visual in wrestling history, abrupt cut to Sting in an empty ring with fans sitting on their hands in no gimmick as Steve Borden, looking like a middle-aged Little League coach in great shape. Sting is the star, not Steve. He calls out Abyss. And then again, this is another of shit stains, picadillos. Oh, well, let's take this guy that's a big star in wrestling, wipe off his face paint, dress him like any other fucking knucklehead, and have him come out there and talk normally, and that means it's a shoot. And then apparently he thinks you can have him say any preposterous goddamn thing because he's not in gimmick. So we've given away AJ Styles and Kurt Angle in 3 minutes, cluttered up a finish, done this mess of a television show leading up to that. And then the guy that kidnapped and tortured a motherfucker to reveal a secret is coming out here to tell all the people who are like, what the fuck is going on? Because they didn't have big screens and they couldn't see the kidnapping and blah, blah, blah. Back to the report. Steve demands to know Abyss's secret. Coaxed him to talk way past the point I cared if he would. Poking Abyss with the baseball bat and Abyss begging off was not good. And as a fan, I like Abyss less the more this deal goes on. Sting says, I'll find out, and walks out. And Abyss finally screams, Stella! No. And nobody gave a shit. Flat finish on a show of chaos. And the secret was later on going to be, as we all know, because that's another of Russo's mental issues because he thinks that Jerry Springer is goddamn great literature, that Mitchell was going to be Abyss's father. And here's how I wrapped up this report real briefly. In all seriousness, I thought this show failed the talent in a lot of cases, giving them so little time, having so many distractions, so many holes of credibility or logic, and just basically so many people yelling, screaming, and fighting with each other anywhere else besides a wrestling ring. 9 minutes, 30 seconds of bell-to-bell action in the show. There was no way for the average viewer to follow it and less reason for them to want to. Overcomplicated and repetitious, barely scratch the surface. This may be something that people will sit and watch for an hour for free, but I don't feel this TV show sold any pay-per-view or got any talent or issue over or advanced to a degree that would mean genuine interest simply because the most violent acts we could think to perpetrate were all done in an hour on free TV and called by announcers having to call preposterous activities as if they're serious so that your two salesmen have no credibility. And neither Mike nor Don needs to try treading into giving some of the over-the-top shit that wink in the voice so they're pretty much buried when this shit happens. Hot-shotting to pop the territory and then backing off just enough is a wonderful thing to behold. However, in my opinion, this show took hot-shotting to the level of a nuclear meltdown, and there were no survivors. Do you have any questions about that TV show before I move on?
So you hand that in. It's never like there's a follow-up like, hey, Jim, I read your report. I had some thoughts on this.
I fax it to him every week. Oh, no, we had fax machines.
But does he bring it up? Does he ever actually bring up anything you wrote in there, or are you just sending it to him, he reads it, and then he goes,
no, he just keeps giving me more work to do. I was already the authority chairman or fucking commissioner, whatever they were calling me. Then this is the first little bit that he's making me a goddamn agent and producer, and then every time I complain, he gives me more to do. And so I took that to mean, well, try to fix it. But nevertheless, I read that report as an example because I don't know if this letter was written a week before that or a week afterwards, but it's sometime around the same time period. And again, this is going directly to Jeff. Who else he showed it to or what he did with it, I didn't know and didn't care. But again, I didn't feel like I was going behind anybody's back because I was saying the same shit every week, not only in writing, but every time I was down there at the goddamn tapings. And many of the boys can, especially the Samoa Joes or the Bobby Roodes or the guys who I was trying to mention were getting over if these other shit wasn't in the way. You know, they remember the eye rolling, but nevertheless, I know some people are going to say, well, you've accused Russo of emailing the boss and knocking you behind your back. I figured I was doing enough out in front. I'm telling the grandson of my mentor and the son of my other mentor what I think is doing damage to his goddamn wrestling company. And he can do with this information what he wants. Again, I was not aware of Dixie's. I would have been gobsmacked if I knew that Dixie even was clueless enough to think that she needed to call shots. But nevertheless, I will read this letter unless you have a question. You don't have a question?
Oh, no, read the letter, please.
Jeff, I genuinely do not want to be as negative as the enclosed reports make it seem, so I sent this with one of the reports. And this is not personal with me and Russo, it is business, regardless of my personal feelings toward him, which sprang in large part from what his booking does to the business I would like to see prosper. I have to say this, even though he is a much nicer person, after finding his invisible man in the sky, the fact remains that it is painfully obvious to everyone, especially the viewing public, that he is playing Booker by writing down everything he's ever seen on a wrestling show without any logic, thought, or knowledge of how it was done or why it ever worked in the first place. He's not doing this maliciously, and he seems to genuinely believe what he's doing is in some way good. But my fear is by the time this experiment is over, all angles will be meaningless. Any credibility the company had will be gone. The new talent will be branded as underneath guys that are worthless. The top guys will be so much less over than they were. And the viewers that do remain will be the ones that will watch anything for free. It'll take a lot longer to bring this back to life than it's taken him to kill it. And even if we have the time, I'm not sure with the available talent in this business that it will be possible. None of the guys on the roster now will be worth a shit in 3 months at this rate. And he's had to work pretty damn hard to kill Kurt Angle off and make Samoa Joe just another uninteresting guy. I know the Impact Zone audience is skewed and not reflective of the guy in Des Moines that just wants to watch a wrestling show. But at this stage, our primary audience is our hardcore fans. And let me just, editor's note, 20 years ago, we used the word hardcore. We weren't talking about hardcore wrestling, garbage matches. The hardcore fans were our base fans that liked TNA because at least there was action in the ring. It was the alternative promotion, the six-sided ring, whatever the case. Again, a lot of people associate TNA with Russo's garbage wrestling because it was on so much of it, but we had a base audience that wanted to see the AJ Styleses, the Christopher Daniels, the Samoa Joes, the Bobby Roodes, James Storms, the guys that were younger and more athletic and doing shit, even the X Division guys, if you'd have presented them as competitive with main event talent. So I don't mean hardcore like, oh, we've got to do more garbage wrestling. I continue. There is no reason to run the diehard fan off just to try to appeal to whoever the fuck it is that he thinks would actually like this shit. As even if the larger mainstream audience wants sports entertainment instead of wrestling, there is little sport and no entertainment to this Jerry Springer show and tight stuff that he belches up every week, and no apparent reason for anyone to buy into it emotionally enough to buy the pay-per-views. I get paid by TNA to watch this show, and I dread that act more and more every week. I can only imagine the feeling of the fans at home who are looking for an alternative to the WWE product, which is silly, but at least makes sense in its own way and has stars performing it. I hope you're not hot at me for saying this, but I'm looking at the company's best interest and feel sorry for the talent who are working as hard as they can at the hopeless cause of making his nonsense work. So it's not like I just invented this shit when I got a podcast.
Did Jeff reply to that? Did he say anything?
No. But what could he say? Because now I know he could, well, Dixie won't let me get rid of him. Even if he had smartened up to him by then.
Yeah, did he know that by then? That it was, I mean, was he still on Team Russo at that point?
I think they had been friends, and I think they still were friends. But I don't know when he started to get the idea, and maybe we'll learn from the Dark Side of the Ring episodes, when he started to get the idea that Dixie was trying to take the thing over, and when he realized that Russo was going to try to help her if he could, rather than stand up for him. Probably later on, but if he was still friends with him, I was insulting the fuck out of his friend in every way I could, and he didn't say a goddamn thing. And that's what he'd even said when I talked to Jeff and Dutch, they had that meeting. You deal with Dutch. You don't have to deal with him. You don't have to talk to him. I said, I can sit in the fucking room with him in a production meeting. But anyway, that's why it was so then I tried to make it a mission. Okay, I'll just see what I can fucking fix. And that's when he didn't like me doing that shit. Because every time I would change something, at what I would come up with, Jeff would agree, yeah, do that. I just didn't have time, only showing up the day of the show, to fix the whole goddamn thing.
If only Jeff had listened to you, or a few years earlier, his dad. Just imagine how different the whole TNA story would be if that entire time there was no Russo.
That's the thing. Listening to his dad wouldn't have meant the money would have got. Dixie was putting the money in. It wouldn't have. The absence of Vince Russo from TNA would not have changed the course of it negatively in any way. No. But one wonders how it would have affected it positively if it had happened.
I mean, if you just look at the other available options this period of time, Dutch Mantell, yourself, even Jeff, even though I don't agree with the way he pushed himself, but even though I understand some of the reasoning behind it, but every other available option. Want to go to the Indies? Gabe Sapolsky, who never did TV anywhere.
And I blame myself in part because Dutch asked when he asked me to come if I wanted to be on the creative team. And I said, no, because I just got finished with 6 years of fucking OVW, right? The year before, I said, I've booked enough fucking wrestling. I'll work for you guys. I'll help you out, whatever. You know me, whatever you need to do, announce it, whatever, right? I again thought it was a Russo-free zone. I thought I was going to work for Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantell. The last thing I figured with them I'd have to argue with is booking. And on the comments on that I made on the initial shows, it was just Jeff did like the all action and the bunch of different style melting pot kind of thing. And that's a philosophical disagreement that we could have had, the video game matches with the X Division. You can go back and forth on that and still love and kiss on each other. But then when Russo showed up, then it was, my God, this is insane. And then there was no way that I was going to become a member of the creative team because he was on it. And Mike Tenay almost had me talked into it one day on the phone. He said, you know, they only meet a couple days a week and they're 3 hours away. Russo lived in Colorado. He was flying in for what? So it wasn't even 2 days every week. Tenay's like, you could go down and, you know, just spend like a day and a half. And you know, if you were there to balance that, whatever. And the way that, because Mike's so smooth, the way that he presented it in that nice, even toned voice, it sounded like it would be very little effort and no big pain in my ass. And then he almost had me. He said, if you want to, I'll call Jeff and tell him you're willing to do it. He can talk to you personally. And then I wrote, but no, I'll still have to be in the meetings with him. Then I'd be back where I was 10 fucking years ago, ready to strangle a guy or eat myself into a goddamn heart attack. He was like, well, I almost did it. I could have been on the creative. I'm not saying that like I could have been that. No, I could have been on the creative team at any point by just asking Jeff, hey, can I be on the team? But I didn't want to at first because I didn't think it was in bad hands and I was burnt. And then when this other fucking idiot came along, I wasn't going to voluntarily sit in a goddamn room with him with just 2 or 3 other people. It was tough enough in a goddamn production meeting. So that kind of closed it off. If he'd have been gone and I was still there, I would have tagged in to help him fix it. Sort of like whoever takes the office from Trump is going to have a lot of fucking experts around to help repair the damage. But it didn't come to that. And then Hogan and Bischoff, and that was that.
One last thing about this period of time. Beyond Dixie, and I guess you could even say Jeff to an extent here at this time, who were Russo's biggest supporters? Like, were there talent that were like, yeah, he's great. He really has it figured out?
There have been various, I can't call everybody's name, but they fall into categories of the young guys in the WWF when he was up there with them that he would write everything for and he would take pains over their backstage promos and everything. They valued him because they got on TV because he put everybody on TV. And that's why it blurred the lines between the underneath guys, the mid-card guys, and the main event guys that you have to have, because you were seeing everybody talk and everybody do shit. He even said, they weren't writing for everybody. I wrote for everybody. Yes, you dumb shit. You gave every motherfucker a starring role in the movie till we couldn't figure out who it was about. So some of the underneath and the younger guys that had never been in a big league atmosphere, or that think, oh, he's writing just for me, they liked him. There were some of the veterans that he sucked up to and catered to that didn't particularly have any major background in the business of wrestling. Sting didn't have anything bad to say about him, I don't believe. Mick Foley doesn't say anything bad about anybody, but I think he would, acknowledge some of his shortcomings, kind of like that, not a full-throated, fuck this guy. But it just, you will hear some positive comments, and it depends on what their relationship was with him and how much he pushed them. But as far as people who had to work alongside, who had to work in similar capacities with, who he was in the office with, or anybody with a great background in the wrestling business in general and knew what the fuck it was about, Jerry Jarrett said it best. It's reading his TV formats was like reading something written by a guy on LSD. So that's, hey, everybody has a fucking admirer somewhere in the world. There's people in prison that get fucking married. But it's not widespread, and it is not grown. Fondness has not come about with a nostalgic look back on anything that Russo ever did in the wrestling business.
It really sucks for Darkseid they couldn't get Dixie. And I know there's nothing they could do. She just won't do it. But I would love to know if she still feels today the way she felt then about the booking stylings of Vince Russo. Or does she?
I don't know that she's never admitted she made any mistake, has she?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Maybe Darkseid could have got her if they'd have said the show was Real Housewives of Brentwood, Tennessee. It was actually going around. That was the story. She was trying to figure out a way to get some kind of Real Housewives of Nashville show. That's what she was wanting.
Well, let's just be happy that she's long out of the wrestling business and won't be seen again until she goes into the WWE Hall of Fame. But that's a great letter.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, all it would have taken, Brian, was concentration and focus. Concentration and focus on what you were doing, on what you were thinking about, on what we were trying to accomplish. But nobody can concentrate, and as we know, shit-stain can't focus. But you know what? Maybe part of the problem was, back then, a lot of those people were on the nicotine pouches. They did that stuff, or they dipped tobacco or chewed tobacco or dipped snuff or things like that. And of course, Russo never had a filthy habit like that. He was just a dipshit. But folks, now they know better, because with our space age technology and our healthier lifestyles, you don't have to have nicotine. You don't have to have caffeine. You don't have to have all these harmful substances that you put in your body that will age you before your time and cause ill health. Instead, you can go to the ultra pouches, because the ultra pouches don't have nicotine. They don't have caffeine. What they do have is scientifically designed materials. They have partnered with leading neuroscientists. You know what kind of scientists them are? Those are neuroscientists. And they use clinically proven nootropics and adaptogens to deliver immediate focus and smooth energy. You don't take one of these goddamn energy drinks, Brian, that's got all that caffeine in it, as well as potentially sugar or other harmful substances, and it'll wire you up tighter than a Gibson guitar on a Saturday night. You'll be spinning around and caffeine was what hospitalized me 35 years ago for the very first time with that horrible acid reflux. And I cut out caffeine and Jim Herd out of my life, and I've slept like a baby and not gone back to the hospital since. So all you got to do is change your habits, Brian. And the ultra pouches, they quiet food cravings, they suppress appetite, if you're fasting or on a diet. Why, if you take enough of these things, you'll never want to eat again.
No, you will. That's not one of the things that we should be saying, and it's been going so well.
Well, you shouldn't take too many.
You shouldn't take too many. I think you should take 1 or 2, and maybe if you're a seasoned pro, 3. I love my Ultra pouches, and I want to thank the Ultra Pouch people for sending over watermelon. That was the flavor I wanted to try. Thank you.
Oh, I thought they sent you just a giant watermelon nevertheless.
Watermelon pouches.
How many of these nicotine pouches or cups of coffee or energy drinks do you need every day, folks out there? You're going to blow your heart up. Your heart's going to be racing. Your sleep is going to be upset. No, don't do that. Use the Ultra pouches at work and next to your desk, and you'll concentrate. It helps with focus. It helps give you that feeling like I'd like to get some work done. And I understand that here's a little hack for you, Brian, from some of the seasoned users. If you use 1 or 2 of these as a suppository, you'll develop X-ray vision.
No, you shouldn't. You won't.
You'll be able to see right through.
Anyway, you won't see anything except the error of your ways. And of course, whether you'll just have to use Tushy to clean your butt, actually, at that point.
Yes.
But back to Ultra pouches for your mouth. Pouches for your mouth. That's one of the
pouches for
it's unsaid. It's unsaid on the packaging.
Shoes for your feet and pockets for your stuff. You're not going to get on edge or anxious compared to the nicotine and the caffeine. You're going to feel more energized and focused. You're not going to get the withdrawals and the shakes and the willies and the Joneses. If you go without caffeine, they're not going to have to put you in a straitjacket and lock you in a rubber room at the puzzle factory. All this they're positive things. 90% of the users of Ultra saw significant improvements in overall focus levels, calm, steady flow state focus, enhanced memory, smooth energy, mood balance, and they could remember all their ex-girlfriends' phone numbers. These things are trusted by top athletes, entrepreneurs, and engineers around the world. You know, the engineers, they make the world go round because they build the bridges and then they run the trains and they run the trains off the bridge if they're not focused. That's why you don't see so many goddamn train accidents these days, because they've got Ultra pouches.
Well, again,
elsewise they'd be just running off into the goddamn
It's a fun thing to think about, but that is not a proven study, so we shouldn't.
Well, there's studies now ongoing by the Cornell Institute.
Cornell
Cornell about railroad engineers and whether their focus or lack thereof leads to more crashes off bridges. But folks, Ultra is the ultimate guilt-free pouch, delivering instant focus and mental clarity without nicotine or caffeine. And new customers right now can use the code JCE to get 15% off at takeultra.com. Takeultra.com, 15% off with the code JCE. Tell them you heard about us here. Support the show. And then when you develop that X-ray vision, just don't look through my walls at night and peek at my little pee-pee when I'm naked.
I don't know what this example. You will not be developing X-ray vision. But again, Ultra pouches, I could personally say I like the tropical and the wintergreen. I'm looking forward to checking out blue raz and watermelon. Great flavors.
What about the cool mint?
That one's good. I'm not as much a cool mint fan. I like wintergreen a little better than cool mint.
Well,
if you get gum,
I want a cool water sandwich on a Sunday go-to-meat and bun.
All right. Well, once again, Jim, I think what you're trying to say is a great deal for new customers, 15% off. TakeUltra.com/JCE. I think that's what you were trying to say.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Not suppositories.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that at the end, so why don't we end on a positive note? Jim, what's that promo code?
JCE. Don't shove them up your
ass. God damn it. TakeUltra.com. Use the code JCE, and it's for your mouth.
All right. Well, now to prove that the more things change, the more they stay the same, we're going to pop up from 2007 to present day. And, you know, AEW, they do a little something every Wednesday night on television. And I've been trying to monitor what they're doing with MJF and Will Ospreay when, again, they have a giant stadium that they ain't going to come close to fucking filling in August. And it's almost the beginning of July as we sit here, and they've made both of the participants in what reasonably should be the main event look like fucking idiots on their television show week after week. But this time, in trying to, and I said I wasn't watching this thing except for that, but in trying to suss out, as they say, the MJF and Ospreay segments, this show is just refer to our previous segment. I'm not going to critique the matches. Now, the difference in the Tony Khan booking and the Vince Russo booking is the matches for Russo never start, and for Tony, they never end. But I'm not critiquing the wrestling matches, but I am saying the same thing about the show. It's chaos, it's clutter, it's amateur hour, it's unfunny comedy, and it's guys just going out there and just, in this case, whereas Russo had charge of, in most cases, good to great talent, here there's a lack of talent. The ones that they do have that are talented are made meaningless. And the ones that aren't, apparently because they're nice guys, get to do whatever the fuck their little hearts desire in the way of their fantasy that they're this wrestling character that they're not. Either way, it's a goddamn mess. Brian, would you like to talk a little bit about the mess?
Not particularly. I mean, it's a rough show to get through, and they had 3 Death Riders matches in a row to start this week. That's just the ultimate way to get.
Well, we ain't gonna talk about any of the matches because there's nothing new to say there. They're all the same. But what happens before and after the matches is they opened the show with the top babyface falling in a goddamn bucket on his ass. They're in some type of storage room with a metal wash tub in it, with Dick the Boozer giving the whole rest of his group, including Ospreay, a pep talk. And Ospreay's standing there just listening. And then they all get in a circle and do some kind of pre-match ritual fire-up thing where they hop around in a circle, and Ospreay tripped over the goddamn bathtub and fell ass first into it and got up laughing. And apparently that was live because they didn't bother to edit it out. So there's our first example of our main event superstar for 90,000 seat Wembley Stadium. Brian, did you think he took the bump well, or?
I don't know if you remember the very, very first UFC 1. There were no numbers. It was just Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Yeah.
It went on air, and the first thing the commentator did was burp right into the microphone. And this was kind of that. This was AEW's belch to start the show. Will Ospreay falls into a dirty bathtub from 60 years ago backstage while doing a Claudio ritual, whatever the fuck. Whatever they think the Death Riders are, whatever they are in Moxley's head, I hate the fact that Bubba Ray Dudley's such a douchebag, because the actual comments he made about the Death Riders,
spot on.
Yeah, they're correct.
Yeah.
And Jon Moxley is as guilty as anyone in wrestling for cosplay wrestling. And he's got Yuta and worse, Garcia, who are completely out of place, despite the desire to make them the young boys. The whole thing sucks. And they drank the worst build ever for a big show. Everyone knew where they were going. Everyone has been saying they're going MJF Will Ospreay. At this point, if it doesn't happen like that, that is shocking. But this was said months ago. This was said at the beginning of the year. And the road to get to where we already knew we were going has been, I said it last time, uninspired.
Uninspired, it's like a drunk man laid it out. The road goes around in circles and comes up its own ass. So then the Boar Horsemen go out there, Moxley, Claudio, and Useless have a 6-man with Brody King, Brodito, and Mystico. And out of that, they beat Brody King, the only one on his team that's worth a shit in the way of they could put him in a position which they did for about 3 weeks. So they beat him. Then they had a girls' match. Then here comes Will Ospreay. He's going to have a match. Great. Against ELP. I thought, so Emerson, Lake, and Palmer have given up music. ELP.
I believe that's El Phantasmo.
Well, but they introduced him as ELP. And they said he used to be El Phantasmo. Who the fuck is El Phantasmo?
ELP.
Have we ever seen this son of a bitch before?
Yes.
He's not the tall, skinny guy that was El something or other.
No, we've seen him before because every time we've seen him, we've said the same thing. That's El Phantasmo?
He's some fucking white guy that looks like a guy working the counter at the AutoZone. Anyway, they said that he and Ospreay have wrestled multiple times and have this big rivalry, and he looks like shit, and his basics are shit, but he does cartwheels. And I think he did a backflip. So Ospreay's fakest looking matches are with these unknown indie guys that can still do flips, because then he lets them do everything they can do. And sometimes even things they can't do well or shouldn't do to him. They had the fakest forearm exchange ever. There was no urgency. There was no contest to this or no struggle. They just went from prearranged routine to whatever. And ELP did everything that Ospreay can do and nearly beat him. And it took 10 minutes for Ospreay to win. So how much better is Will Ospreay than Joe Nobody that's never going to goddamn mean shit? It was like this. Again, how can we expect Will Ospreay to be a main event babyface when he is being told what to do by this loudmouthed, brain-damaged fucking heel, can hardly beat people we've never heard of? They all do the same shit he does. What makes him special? Or a babyface that we want to watch and root for?
4.5 stars in the Observer.
Oh, are you out of your fucking mind?
I'll tell you, after we're done with this, I'll tell you all the Dynamite star ratings. I was blown away. I don't know what show Dave is watching or what he's doing while he's watching, but these are insane.
So Ospreay won, and then Nana and Swerve Strickland came out. And Ospreay looks at him, and he just walks off somewhere, and it's time for Swerve's match. And Swerve is wrestling Danny Garcia. So Swerve with the heel, with his heel manager, Nana, that is going to face the babyface Ospreay in the finals of the Owen Hart tournament to determine who faces the world champion at Wembley Stadium. Garcia walks in from the emptiest parking lot I've ever seen in broad daylight. There's not a car for 100 yards. There's not a person walking visible. Where did he come from? Is he dressing at a gas station? What? There's no point of disembarkment. Was he coming out of a trailer, a camper, a fucking glory hole somewhere? Where did he fucking start?
Buffalo. No, the problem is this Death Rider stuff. This is one of the stupidest things about them. It's one thing, though, as illogical as it may be, but Moxley's always in AEW come in from the side or the fans, or he doesn't dress in the locker room because he's bad or dirty or whatever the fuck. So that makes sense in some stupid way. Coming in from outside, they've done this before where they've come in from outside during daytime. Or
Yes.
they've come in from outside and it's like, are they in a backyard? Remember that one? It was like a small building, like in a neighborhood. It looked like they were in a backyard. There was a fence.
Yeah,
There was a
they've
chain
left
link
somebody's
fence and
barbecue.
grass. Yeah. So it looks bad. We see Jey Uso every single week on WWE. Even when he's a heel, seemingly. They show him with people up the gazoo. There's people everywhere. It wasn't even that there were no people outside, and that looked bad. And he's so unintimidating, it all looked bad. And then he gets in, and what are there, 15 fans inside?
Yeah, in the breezeway, and you see that it's a small building. And horrible music. Swerve went right to the ring. The jobber came out, took 5 minutes. And again, the same match. After the first minute, they were on the floor. The jobber beat the shit out of a top heel. They're on the floor for 2 minutes with no count out. It takes Swerve 12 minutes to beat some schlub. So we've got 2 weaklings that barely eke by in the finals of the tournament. Then heel Swerve starts to get more heat on heel Garcia when Ospreay, the babyface, saves Garcia and is about to knock out Swerve, but Nana tripped Ospreay. And Swerve went to give his big move to Ospreay where he drops him on his head. But Garcia, the jobber, saves Ospreay. So Swerve gave Garcia the fucking move. And Ospreay comes in swinging a chair and not hitting anybody. Day late and a dollar short, a feckless, impotent babyface that needed to be saved by a goddamn job guy. There's your challenger for the world title, folks. And then, as I mentioned, every time they do the interview with MJF and the Don Fallis family, they're in a stairwell with an echo. They're back in a stairwell, and a few of the guys talked. Okada said, bitch. Kyle looks more ridiculous now every week. It looked like he was wearing a goddamn, who was it, Jim Carrey in the mask wearing the zoot suits? MJF did a good promo, but the group drags it all down. And again, it's just... Then they had Jungle Jack off against Zack Sabre Jr., and at least they finally figured out that old Jungle Jack just needs to be fed to people and run his contract out because he's done and over with. But they fed him to a Q-tip.
You say fed him. It took like, what, almost 15 minutes. He didn't just beat him. He should have. He's about to wrestle Omega. It took him almost...
Oh, but I'm ecstatic that they finally realized that old Perry don't need to be beating these emaciated little concentration camp survivors.
Well, let's not say that. That's Perry's a pretty small, slight little guy. I mean, it's even more, I think, ridiculous for him to be the one to go over than Zack Sabre Jr.
Oh, come on. Perry got to outweigh Sabre.
No way. Were you out of your mind?
Sabre uses a Cheerio for a hula hoop.
Sabre
Are you
has
kidding?
to have a good
He turns
5 or 6
sideways, he
inches
sticks
on
his
him.
tongue out, he looks like a zipper.
I think Zack Sabre Jr. outweighs that. He completely has to outweigh Jack Perry just because of the size difference. Even though he's skinny with like a giant Baba-like body, Perry is just a little guy. He's a little guy.
Yeah, I think one of them has helium up their ass too. That makes them lighter.
Tushy.
Well, boy, I wish they would make a fucking bidet to clean your ass from bad wrestling. Did not Nigel called? I swear to God, did Nigel even? He said that they had Sabre was a master in the Admiral Lord Mountbatten style of wrestling, a world of sport today. It's Nigel. He fucked it up. It's Admiral Lord Mount Evans. Mountbatten is goddamn what Prince fucking dipshit was. What was his name?
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Yeah, well, I learned this from Adrian Street. I'm not just, now somebody's going to go, oh, Cornette now doesn't even know what the goddamn British, or knows better than the British guys about British wrestling. That was part of Adrian Street's promo. He would go and he violated, I stick to the rules. The rules of wrestling is laid down by Admiral Lord Mount Evans. This is a shoot that in, I don't know, it was the 30s or the 40s or whatever it fucking was in England, when they tried to bring over the Toots Mondt Western style slam bang wrestling with the cheating and the violence and the foreign objects and things like that. When they brought it to England, it got over with the people, but it didn't get over with the goddamn authorities. And they outlawed. Do you know anything about this, Brian? Or you know a little bit about everything, but I mean, they outlawed wrestling or tried to outlaw it. And they eventually put Admiral Lord Mount Evans. Can you even Google him? I don't know what his background was.
I've done that right now.
But I don't know what his background was, but they put him in charge of establishing rules of a code of conduct of wrestling. And that's why in England, wrestling developed as a mat-based technical kind of thing with comedy and not too much heat, because it had been actually banned at one time and they didn't want to fuck the whole thing up. What does Google say?
Admiral Lord Mount Evan rules were a set of professional wrestling rules mainly used in the United Kingdom in the second half of the 20th century. Introduced in 1947, they were named after Edward Evans, 1st Baron Mount Evans, who ordered a unified set of rules written up for professional wrestling in the British Isles to re-legitimize professional wrestling in the eyes of the public and the press. Professional wrestling in the UK had become discredited before World War II due to the prominence of the preceding all-in style.
There you go.
Which came to emphasize as anything goes style of presentation. Kind of like AEW. Maybe you shouldn't be quoting this guy in AEW.
He'd come in as, that's what they need, is Admiral Lord Mount Evans III to come in and straighten the whole thing out.
These rules would remain the prominent style of professional wrestling in the UK until the 1990s.
Yep.
When they were increasingly abandoned in favor of a style and presentation in line with American professional wrestling.
So anyway, at least we learned something from this show. But Sabre made him give up. He didn't even get to tap because he was all tied up. He said, "Yes, I quit. Cry me a river, Jungle Boy." So then
4 stars in the Observer.
Oh, the Hardley Boys wrestled Bad Dude Tito and the other guy. And guess who won? And I'm sure that was 5 stars also. But then old Bad Dude Tito and the other guy started to get some heat in quotation marks on the Hardley Boys. And music played, and Kenny and Jungle Jack came out to make the save. I guess they very well, we beat him before, so let's let him do something. But I swear, as soon as Kenny slid in the ring, while the other guys were fighting on the floor, he and Sabre stood in the middle of the ring, trash-talking each other head to head, and then started trading forearms faker than the ones in the Osprey match. They're obviously not hitting each other. They're not even registering it. And so then, after everybody bailed out of the ring, Kenny got the microphone and cut a promo on old Zack Sabre. And it was what you could imagine it would be. And he even said, "May the best man win." And I mean that truly. For I am the best man. And then they've started playing the music, but I think Kenny had apparently pissed old Zack off because his last line was something like, "After I beat you, they're going to forget about you like they did last time." And the music came up and Zack got the microphone and they had to bring the music down because Zack had to fucking have the last word. And I don't think anybody knew he was going to do that. And Zack said, "Well, why don't you try to stay out of the hospital, all right, darling?" I got news for you. If you've got voices that sound like 2 canaries that have just been kicked in the balls, try not to call your opponent darling.
Did you hear what Dave Meltzer had to say about this match?
Oh, good Lord. No, I can't imagine. It's 4.5 stars. What would that be?
Well, actually, he didn't give it a star rating because it went under 5 minutes maybe, and it's a Bucks match. I don't know. Everything else on the show got inflated stars. But this was sent over by a bunch of people. Apparently the Bucks won with their move, which was the Meltzer Driver, and then it was the TK Driver for Tony Khan, and every time...
Well, we should mention for the people who don't watch this, and there's so many of them, Matt gets the guy up like for a tombstone pile driver, and that's hard enough to fucking buy, that this little minuscule amoeba-shaped fellow is going to pick anybody up upside down. But then he has to stand there while his brother does the springboard to the top rope and then does a front flip. And the idea is that he will be grabbing the guy's legs and forcing him into a spiked tombstone to double the impact. But what in actual practice usually happens is he lands on his ass in front of his brother while he's kind of missed the legs, and his brother just does the tombstone. And they named that the Meltzer Driver when they were in Pro Wrestling Chimpanzee, because Dave would come to the front row and hang his tongue out at him.
They knew Dave Meltzer would love that, and Dave Meltzer absolutely loved that.
Yeah, and then when they got another sucker that had more money to give him a job, then they renamed it the TK Driver for Tony Khan. But nevertheless, what was Dave's comment?
Well, let's go to this. Again, I haven't heard this all the way through, but this
we got audio.
We have audio. This was sent over by a bunch of listeners. This is from, they posted it. It's from Wrestling Observer Radio. Brian Alvarez, usually the voice of reason on these things, and Dave Meltzer. Last week, Jim, it was the fans' fault that AEW Dynamite stunk. Not the booking, not the matches, not the format, the fans. It was their fault.
They just didn't react.
Why is this move not named the Meltzer Driver anymore? Whose fault is it? Let's go to this.
The Young Bucks versus TMDK, which was a very quick match, didn't even go through a break. TK Driver finish, and then Sabre and TMDK attack to the Bucks.
It's not TK Driver anymore.
What is it now? It's back to the Meltzer Driver?
Well, they didn't call it anything.
It's just that move?
It was the Meltzer Driver last week. This week, it doesn't have a name.
It needs a name.
Yeah, it can't be my name, but it's not TK Driver anymore. So they need to come up with a name.
It can be your name, Dave. It has been for years.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's like
you don't get a choice, brother.
Well, it's not. It's nothing to do with me. It's got to do with the. It's if it wasn't for the horrible people, it could be. But there's horrible people, so it can't be.
No, it can be.
What?
Well,
are the people in the room with you now, Dave?
Well, again, he's saying it here. Let me go back to this part.
But hold on. I'm just saying that they called it the thing last week. They've been calling it that on and off. And they've also called it the TK Driver. But did suddenly horrible people? Who are these horrible people that have decreed to these people on this show that they can't call it the Meltzer Driver anymore when the people that are in charge allegedly are the ones that are calling it that?
And he seems a little bit upset about it too, but let's replay this part where he says it's the horrible
people.
Well, it's not. It's nothing to do with me. It's got to do with the. It's if it wasn't for the horrible people, it could be. But there's horrible people, so it can't be.
No, it can be. Just ignore the horrible people.
It's
care. Possible.
I don't care, but it's other people who care.
Well, that's too bad for them. That's their problem.
I could care less.
Okay,
I mean, they can call it the Meltzer Driver, and I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm not going to ever complain about it. I thought that was the original name, and you know what was hilarious was when they switched it. You didn't even know this when they switched it, and I didn't know it either. It was because now they hated me.
Wow,
did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, because it had nothing to do with it, but people, that was the conclusion people came to. So then when they gave it back last week, I was wondering, are people going to think that they like me again? You know? I mean, it's just like...
Well, hold on here. Nobody's ever thought that they hated Dave Meltzer, and certainly nobody's ever thought that Dave Meltzer did anything but have the most romantic love since the days of Shakespeare for them. They just assumed that, like we just said, that they changed the name because The Meltzer Driver was when they were indie fuckwits unknown. And now that a billionaire has given them the biggest job of their lives, they're going to give him the fucking move. And it's simple. And they can call it whatever they want to call it. There's no horrible people.
Who are the horrible people? And if it's...
I think he's saying the horrible people are the fans that go, oh, you shouldn't call it that.
But then he's saying that it's not up to him. He doesn't care. They can call it the Meltzer Driver, but they get upset.
If he's spending that much time on it, he cares, for one thing.
But what he's saying, though, is it's not me, it's them. They care. Who's them? Is it Tony or is it the Bucks?
Well, no, it's horrible people in the middle somewhere, but they're unknown except to Dave.
Are we the horrible people?
He hears their voices.
Jim, are we the horrible people?
The horrible people. The horrible people.
Oh, come on. Don't do
the horrible people. The horrible people.
The horrible music. The horrible music.
I'll be Hara and you be Bull.
The horrible people made it so the Young Bucks had to change the move that they named after the guy who they were trying to get to give as good a positive, endless review as anyone else in history, which is exactly
he will never come out and just say things in plain language. He hems and haws, he stutters, he tries to figure out a way not to bury himself and not to piss anybody off. And then he, at the same time, tries to make it sound like he knows shit that he's just not allowed to say. And the whole thing bubbles up into a big pot of incomprehensible bleh.
Well, he obviously doesn't care about this the same way Ole Anderson didn't care about being in the Hall of Fame. Remember that old argument? Well, you wrote a chapter about it. You obviously care. Well, Dave, you're talking about it here. You're the one who made this an issue in this little segment, so obviously you do care about it.
Meanwhile, back to AEW, girls match. Then the Buckaroos were doing a promo in the back with Renee Moxley Good in a stairwell somewhere. And suddenly Edge and Christian come down the stairway in a fight with the dogs. The dogs are Chuck Connors and Dave Finlay, Fitt's son, right? And as they fight down the stairway, then they do comedy with their Edge and Christian's comments to the Buckaroos, and then the fight continues and goes on, and they're doing comedy there. One of them's hiding behind the makeup girl, and then they get sprayed in the eyes with hairspray. And then the heels get camera cables and just choke Edge and Christian out and stand over them and do some more comedy of some description. People screaming and fighting, but not even being serious about it. So this is like if Russo wrote sketch comedy rather than daytime talk. Then we're still waiting on, because MJF is going to come back out. First, they have to get Ricochet and Take a Shit out of the way. Then Mark Briscoe comes out to do an in-ring promo. And Brian, I don't know if you made it to this point because they're like 10 minutes into the overrun at this point. And I've always been a fan of Mark Briscoe's. This was not his best. The people were mostly just standing there staring. It was too late in the night. This went on way longer than it should have. And honestly, from where Mark was speaking when Don came out to ringside, I think they sent Don just like, go, just fucking go. Make him look at you. We're goddamn over. Just go. Get it, because Mark, there was no cue there. He just came out. So then Don, of course, distracts Mark Briscoe while MJF attacks him. And they have a fight. And then Kyle came in and stopped Briscoe. And then Take a Shit came in and stopped Kyle. And then O'Boring came in. And Kyle O'Reilly and Kevin Knight and Darby Allin, each one would come in and hit their finish on whoever else was left in the ring. Jake Doyle, Roderick Strong, Pockets. Pockets was one of the last ones, and he did 2 fake Superman punches that never touched the guy. And then MJF kicked Pockets in the balls, but Briscoe got MJF. But Andrade saved MJF. But then MJF and Andrade argue because they're mad at each other, even though they're both heels. And then Don settled it down so that Andrade would hold Briscoe. MJF put the ring on, swung, Briscoe ducked. MJF hit Andrade, and Briscoe gave MJF the J Driller. I mean, that's, you've got to admire anybody that can. Tony Khan should be a forger. Because when you can do somebody else's work exactly that is Russo booking. And I think Tony Khan should start painting like Rembrandts and Picassos. Because when you can continue to come up with shit that you could tell anybody with any experience in the wrestling business, Russo booked that, they'd say, yeah, I think you're right. You've done something.
It doesn't sound too dissimilar from the TNA format you reviewed earlier. The end of that show, the exact same ending.
And what happened to the end of that promotion? They suffered through many dark years before they found another angel, and now they're under the thumb of the evil empire. Tony ain't gonna run out of money, but if TNA hadn't run out of money, they'd still run out of fans.
Well, Tony started with a lot more good grace than they did, so he's got a ways to go. And that was Dynamite, an uninspired Dynamite. The build to this pay-per-view that no one gives a shit about sucks. All this interstitial nonsense with MJF and Ospreay has made me not care about either one of them. The Callis family's a joke. Even with a couple real good, young, talented wrestlers like, well, I was about to say Takeshita, he's gone. Like a Fletcher. But I mean, then there's Rocky Romero, there's Lance Archer, just a variety of heels with nothing to do that no one takes serious.
Take a plate and put a big old medium rare filet mignon on that plate, and then put a nice grilled piece of salmon on that plate, and then put a baked potato on that plate, and then cover it up with pancakes and maple syrup, throw in some goddamn ice cream with sprinkles, and dribble in some goddamn anchovies and potato chips. You can take a thing that may be good at its nucleus and you can gimmick it up enough that it's unpalatable. And there's a lot of people getting in the way of their steak and potato.
Well, there it is, the out-of-control cruise ship buffet that is AEW Dynamite.
Well, and join us, folks, on the drive-thru coming up in just a few days, because we're going to report on the big weekend of AEW pay-per-view, WWE pay-per-view, and hopefully some puppy stories to give us a nice palate cleanser. That'll be on the drive-thru. We'll be back here next week on The Experience to complain about more shit. Brian, any closing thoughts?
The drive-thru will be fun, we promise. So listen to that, and we love our sponsors, so support them because they put up with us.
And don't forget to shove them sumbitches up your ass.
Thank
you, fuck you, and bye-bye, everybody.
No!